In a galaxy of tyranny and a time of conspiracy, the destiny of a great republic rests on the shoulders of a group of individuals, their names, the Avengers. The Force had existed for eternity, an energy field connecting all living things, binding the galaxy together in an invisible web of cause and effect. Jedi meditated on it, Sith corrupted it. But the Force itself was not merely energy, it was conscious will, seeking balance across time and space. And when that balance faced a threat beyond its ability to directly resolve, the Force did something it had never done before. It reached across the barriers between universes and pulled champions from another reality entirely. The sensation was instantaneous and disorienting. One moment, the Avengers were in the rebuilt Avengers compound, reviewing potential threats flagged by Friday's monitoring systems. The next, reality folded around them like paper, colors inverted, gravity reversed, and they were falling through a tunnel of impossible light that screamed with energy their minds couldn't process. "Jarvis, report!" Tony Stark's voice crackled through the Mark 85 armor as he stabilized his flight systems. "What the hell just happened?" "I am detecting catastrophic dimensional displacement, sir," Friday's voice replied, her usual calm replaced by something approaching concern. "Universal constants have changed. Gravity is different. Stellar radiation patterns are unfamiliar. We are no longer in our universe." "Everyone sound off," Steve Rogers commanded, his leadership instincts kicking in despite the chaos. His vibranium shield was already in hand, ready for whatever came next. "I'm here," Peter Parker called out, web swinging through the void to stabilize himself. "But where is here exactly? Because this looks like the inside of a kaleidoscope designed by Doctor Strange on a really weird day." Thor's voice boomed with godly authority. "I sense ancient magic, not Asgardian, not from any of the 9 realms, but powerful beyond measure. Something has summoned us." Summoned? Bruce Banner, currently in Smart Hulk form, grabbed onto Natasha and Clint as they fell, his massive strength making them seem weightless. Who summons the Avengers without asking? That's incredibly rude. Wanda Maximoff's hands blazed with crimson chaos magic, her powers instinctively reaching out to understand their new environment. What she felt made her gasp. "There's energy everywhere. It's like it's alive, conscious, and it's been waiting for us." Vision phased through the dimensional turbulence, his mind stone glowing with unusual intensity. "I concur with Wanda's assessment. The energy permeating this reality is fundamentally different from anything in our universe. It appears to have intent, purpose, and..." He paused, processing impossible data. "It appears to be grateful we're here." T'Challa activated his Black Panther suit's kinetic absorption systems, ready for combat. "Grateful for what?" The tunnel of light exploded outward, depositing all 10 Avengers in real space with enough force to crater the ground beneath them. They landed on a planet that looked simultaneously ancient and abandoned. Massive stone structures covered in unfamiliar symbols, crystal formations that hummed with energy, and a sky filled with stars in configurations Earth's astronomers had never charted. "Okay," Tony said, standing and immediately deploying his armor's scanner array. "Friday, where are we?" "Unknown, sir. Star charts do not match any recorded constellations. Atmospheric composition is breathable, but contains trace elements not found on Earth. And I'm detecting power signatures, massive ones, approaching fast." In the sky above, 2 Republic LAAT gunships descended, their ball turrets tracking the Avengers with obvious tactical intent. Behind them came a sleek Jedi starfighter, its elegant design contrasting sharply with the military brutality of the clone transports. The starfighter landed first, and out stepped Anakin Skywalker, his blue lightsaber already ignited, his expression mixing caution with intense curiosity. Ahsoka Tano followed, her dual white lightsabers humming as she took in the strangers who'd appeared from literally nowhere. "Identify yourselves," Anakin commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a Jedi general who'd led armies. "How did you breach Republic airspace? What ship brought you here?" Steve Rogers stepped forward, shield raised defensively, but not aggressively. "I'm Captain Steve Rogers. These are the Avengers. We're from Earth, but apparently not your Earth, and we didn't breach anything. Something pulled us here against our will." Clone troopers surrounded them, blasters raised. Captain Rex's voice came through his helmet vocoder. "General Skywalker, should we detain them?" "Hold your fire, Rex," Anakin said, but he didn't lower his lightsaber. He reached out through the Force to sense these strangers and felt nothing. Complete voids, like they didn't exist in the Force at all. "What are you? I can't sense you through the Force. That's not normal." "The Force?" Tony's faceplate retracted, revealing his trademark smirk. "Is that some kind of local energy field? Because Friday's detecting massive amounts of what she's classifying as exotic energy, permeating this entire planet. Actually, this entire solar system. Hell, it looks like it's everywhere." "The Force is everything," Ahsoka said, studying these strangers with growing fascination. "It connects all living things, binds the galaxy together, and you're saying you can't sense it?" "We're saying we've never heard of it," Natasha replied, her weapons holstered but her stance ready for combat. "Where we're from, there's no Force, just physics technology, and in a few special cases." She glanced at Thor, Wanda, and Vision, powers that break those rules. Thor stepped forward, Stormbreaker appearing in his hand with a flash of lightning. The sudden manifestation of a weather control made every clone trooper flinch. "I am Thor Odinson, son of Odin, god of thunder and king of Asgard. We mean you no harm, warriors, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. Now tell us, what realm is this, and who dares summon the Avengers?" Anakin and Ahsoka exchanged glances. A self-proclaimed god who could summon lightning? Beings the Force couldn't detect? Technology unlike anything in Republic databases? This was either the greatest threat they'd faced or the strangest potential alliance in Clone Wars history. "This is Ossus," Anakin said slowly, his tactical mind processing implications. "An ancient Jedi world in what we call the Forgotten Realm. This sector was abandoned centuries ago for reasons nobody remembers. We only detected your arrival because the Force itself seemed to scream when you appeared." "The Force screamed?" Wanda's eyes glowed red briefly. "I felt that. Like reality itself was crying out in relief that we'd arrived." Vision's Mind Stone pulsed. "If I may offer a hypothesis, based on the energy readings I'm detecting and the nature of our displacement, I believe this Force reached across dimensional barriers and deliberately summoned us. The question is why?" Before anyone could answer, the ground began to shake. Not an earthquake, but something worse. A psychic tremor that made even the Force-blind Avengers feel like reality was tearing. From the ancient ruins behind them came a sound that was part roar, part whisper, part screaming void. "It's awake!" Ahsoka gasped, her connection to the Force showing her horrors the others couldn't see. "Master Skywalker, the darkness, the reason the Jedi abandoned this world. It's waking up." "Darkness?" Bruce Banner asked, but his question was answered by what emerged from the ruins. It wasn't a creature. It wasn't even a being. It was an absence, a hole in reality shaped vaguely like something alive, radiating wrongness that made every sensor scream, every Force-sensitive mind recoil, and every Avenger instinctively prepare for combat. Avengers! Steve's voice cut through the horror. Whatever that thing is, assemble! Tony finished, his armor fully deploying every weapon system. The ancient evil that the Jedi had imprisoned millennia ago looked at 10 warriors from another universe and did something it hadn't done in thousands of years. It laughed. Finally, it said, with a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere. The Force sends champions. How desperate, how delicious. Tell me, heroes from beyond, do you bleed? Do you break? Do you understand that you've been summoned not to stop me, but to feed me? Thor's response was to hurl Stormbreaker with godly force. The enchanted axe, capable of killing Thanos, flew directly at the entity. The darkness simply absorbed it, and Stormbreaker vanished into the void like it had never existed. Oh, the entity purred. This is going to be fun. If you want to see more epic crossovers, where Earth's heroes face galactic threats, hit that subscribe button and drop which superhero team you'd want to see enter the Star Wars galaxy in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The silence after Stormbreaker vanished was deafening. Thor stood frozen, his hand still extended from the throw, staring at the void where his weapon had disappeared. For the first time in 1,000 years, the god of thunder looked genuinely shocked. That's not possible, Thor said slowly. Stormbreaker is forged from Uru metal in the heart of a dying star. It cannot simply be unmade. And yet, the entity's voice echoed from the darkness. It is. Your weapon, your power, your godhood, all of it means nothing here. I am entropy given form. I am the ending of all things. I am what the Force fears. Friday, analysis, Tony demanded, his armor's sensors working overtime. What am I looking at? Unknown, sir. The entity doesn't register as matter, energy, or any known form of existence. It's reading as negative space, like someone cut a hole in reality itself. Vision phased forward, his mind stone blazing as he attempted to analyze the threat. It's not from this dimension or ours. It exists between realities, feeding on the boundaries that separate them. And it's hungry. The entity shifted, its formless shape condensing into something vaguely humanoid, but wrong in ways that hurt to perceive. The synthetic understands. How refreshing. Yes, I feed on barriers. The walls between light and dark, life and death, matter and antimatter, and most deliciously, the Force itself. Anakin's lightsaber blazed brighter as he reached out through the Force, trying to understand what he was facing. What he sensed made his blood run cold. It's draining the Force. I can feel it, like someone's bleeding the energy from this entire sector. For millennia, I have been imprisoned here. The entity continued, its voice carrying ancient rage. Sealed by the arrogant Jedi who thought they could contain entropy itself. But seals weaken, prison walls crumble. And now I am nearly free. Soon I will consume this galaxy's precious force, and then it focused on the Avengers. Then I will cross into your universe and consume that too. Over my dead body, Steve said, shield raised. That can be arranged. The entity struck without warning. Tendrils of living darkness lashed out faster than thought, wrapping around Steve and lifting him off the ground. The super soldier struggled, but for the first time since becoming Captain America, he felt his strength failing, like the serum itself was being drained from his cells. Cap! Natasha fired her widow's bites, electric projectiles that could drop a bull elephant. They passed through the darkness harmlessly. Clint's explosive arrows detonated against the entity with zero effect. It's not physical. How do we fight something that's not there? With something that defies physics? Wanda's hands blazed with chaos magic, and she unleashed a blast of reality-warping energy directly at the entity's core. This time, It reacted. The darkness recoiled, releasing Steve, who crashed to the ground gasping. The entity's form flickered, destabilized by Wanda's attack. "Interesting," it hissed. "Chaos magic, reality manipulation. You wield power from outside the Force. That actually hurts." It solidified again, seeming intrigued rather than wounded. But pain is just another sensation to consume. "Then consume this," Hulk roared, leaping forward with strength that had leveled buildings. His fist, charged with gamma radiation and raw rage, slammed into the entity with force that should have created a shockwave. Instead, the darkness simply flowed around the impact, reforming instantly. Then it wrapped around Hulk's arm. "So much anger," the entity purred. "So much rage. I can feel it, the beast within you, the fury that makes you strong. What happens if I take it away?" Hulk's roar transformed into confusion as his green skin began fading to normal. Bruce Banner's consciousness pushed forward, forcing the transformation to reverse. "No, stop! The Hulk! I can't control it if you... Let him go!" T'Challa launched himself at the entity, vibranium claws extended. His suit absorbed kinetic energy and redirected it, but there was nothing to redirect here. The darkness simply caught him mid-leap and held him suspended. "Vibranium," the entity observed, studying T'Challa with alien curiosity. "A metal that absorbs all vibration, all energy. But I am the absence of energy. What happens when nothing meets nothing?" Tony Stark's mind was racing through combat scenarios at superhuman speed. Physical attacks didn't work. Energy weapons were useless. Even Wanda's reality manipulation only slowed it down. They needed a new approach. "Vision, Wanda, coordinate with me," Tony's repulsors charged. "Friday, link our power signatures. I've got an idea." "Sir, linking arc reactor output with chaos magic and the Mind Stone could create cascade failure. Or it could create something this thing hasn't seen before. Do it." Vision understood immediately. His Mind Stone blazed yellow. Wanda's chaos magic swirled red. Tony's arc reactor glowed blue-white. The three power sources, technology, cosmic artifact, and reality manipulation, merged into a beam of pure impossibility that struck the entity dead center. The darkness screamed, not in pain, but in surprise. The combined attack didn't hurt it so much as confuse it. Three different forms of power, none based on the Force, attacking simultaneously in ways it couldn't predict or counter. "It's working!" Peter Parker swung in, his spider sense guiding him to weak points in the entity's form. "Keep hitting it! I can see where it's vulnerable!" Ahsoka and Anakin joined the assault, their lightsabers carving through the darkness in coordination with the Avengers' attacks. The Jedi couldn't sense the entity through the Force, but they could see it, and their plasma blades seemed to at least annoy it. "Rex, get your men back," Anakin ordered. "This isn't a fight for blasters." "With respect, General, we're not leaving you alone." With that thing, Rex and his clone troopers opened fire with concentrated volleys, and while their attacks did nothing directly, they created enough light and heat to make the darkness recoil slightly. The entity was being driven back toward the ruins it had emerged from, but it wasn't defeated, just irritated. "Enough! You want to see true power? Let me show you what I learned during my imprisonment." The darkness exploded outward, and suddenly every Avenger was facing their worst fear made manifest. Steve saw the ice of the Arctic closing around him. Tony relived the cave in Afghanistan. Natasha saw the Red Room. Clint heard his family's dying screams. Bruce felt himself losing control to the Hulk permanently. Peter watched Uncle Ben die again. T'Challa saw Wakanda burning. Thor witnessed Asgard's destruction. Wanda relived Vision's death. "Illusions," Vision called out, though even he was struggling against visions of his own demise. It's probing our minds, creating psychological attacks. Not just illusions, Anakin gasped, seeing his mother dying in his arms again, the memory that haunted him most. It's using the Force, pulling our fears directly from our minds. Then we shut our minds. Natasha's training kicked in, the psychological conditioning she'd received, allowing her to compartmentalize. It's reading our thoughts. Stop thinking, act on instinct. Easier said than done, Clint muttered, but he closed his eyes and let his archer's instinct take over. His next arrow flew blind but struck true, hitting some component of the entity that made it shriek. Steve fought through the visions of his past, his shield becoming an anchor to reality. Avengers! It's trying to divide us. Keep fighting together. Together? The entity laughed. But you're not together. You're strangers in a strange land. The Jedi don't trust you. You don't trust them. How can you fight as one when you barely know each other? Because that's what we do. Tony's voice cut through the psychic assault. We're the Avengers. We fought aliens in New York. We stopped a genocide in Sokovia. We fought each other and came back stronger. You think some interdimensional horror is going to break us? Please, we've been through worse at press conferences. Thor's voice boomed, and lightning began crackling despite Stormbreaker's absence, raw divine power channeled through his godly nature itself. And I am Thor, son of Odin. I do not need weapons to command the storm. I am the storm. Lightning struck the entity from cloudless skies, and this time it actually hurt. The darkness convulsed, its form destabilizing. The God of Thunder speaks truth, Ahsoka said, her own fear visions fading as she centered herself in the Force. Master Skywalker, I don't think this thing can be killed, but maybe it can be re-imprisoned. Anakin's eyes widened with understanding. The ruins! The ancient Jedi sealed it here before. The containment field must still exist. If we can drive it back inside, we can rebuild the prison. Wanda's chaos magic flared. I can feel the residual enchantments. They're old, damaged, but still there. If someone can force it back inside, I can seal the breach. Someone strong enough to push it, Bruce said, his voice deepening as he let the Hulk persona take control again. The gamma radiation in his body flared, and Smart Hulk's intelligence combined with the Hulk's raw fury. Someone whose strongest there is. The entity realized their plan and tried to retreat, but vision phased through its defenses, his density manipulation allowing him to interact with its non-physical form. You made a mistake, Vision said calmly. You showed us fear, but fear is just another form of determination. Avengers! Steve's command rang out. Push! As one unified force, Avengers, Jedi, and clone troopers, they drove the entity back toward the ruins. Thor's lightning, Wanda's magic, Tony's repulsors, Hulk's strength, the Jedi's lightsabers, and the pure determination of heroes from two universes combined into an assault that even entropy itself couldn't fully withstand. The entity was forced back through the breach in the ancient ruins. Wanda's hands blazed with chaos magic as she reached out to the millennia-old containment field and did something impossible. She rewrote reality itself, repairing enchantments that had been cast before Earth even had writing. The prison sealed with a sound like the universe sighing in relief. Silence fell. The Avengers stood gasping, bruised but alive. The ancient evil was contained again, not destroyed but locked away where it couldn't consume the galaxy. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber slowly, staring at these warriors from another dimension who just helped imprison something the Jedi Order had forgotten existed. Who are you people? We told you, Steve said, extending his hand. We're the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, and apparently the galaxy's newest problem solvers. Anakin took his hand and shook it, a gesture of respect between warriors. "Welcome to the Clone Wars. I think you're gonna fit right in." The journey back to Coruscant aboard Anakin's Republic cruiser was a study in culture shock from both sides. The Avengers marveled at hyperspace travel, watching stars elongate into impossible lines as the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. The Jedi and clone troopers, meanwhile, couldn't stop staring at beings who just helped imprison an ancient evil without any connection to the Force. Tony Stark had immediately befriended the ship's astromech droid, R2-D2, and was currently attempting to hack into its memory banks. This is incredible. Friday, are you seeing this? Binary language, but way more sophisticated than anything we use. And the computational architecture is... Sir, I should point out that tampering with military equipment without authorization is generally frowned upon. Friday's voice came through his armor's speakers. "I'm not tampering, I'm networking. There's a difference." Tony pulled out a small device from his armor's storage. "R2, buddy, want to see something cool? This is a miniaturized arc reactor, clean, sustainable energy that could power this entire ship for a year on a single charge." R2-D2 beeped excitedly, his sensors analyzing the arc reactor with obvious fascination. Anakin, overhearing the exchange, approached with interest. "You're saying that small device could power a Republic cruiser?" Anakin asked, his mechanical aptitude immediately recognizing the implications. "Our hypermatter reactors take up entire decks and require constant maintenance." "That's because you're still using primitive fusion-based systems," Tony said, his engineer's ego showing. "The arc reactor uses clean energy generation at the atomic level. No waste, no decay, just pure power. I could revolutionize your entire energy infrastructure in about a week." "Assuming we let you stay that long," Ahsoka interjected, though her tone was more curious than hostile. "Master Skywalker, the Council's going to want to see them immediately. 10 warriors who appeared from nowhere, imprisoned an ancient evil, and can't be sensed through the Force? They'll either want to recruit them or imprison them." "Or both," Anakin muttered. He turned to Steve Rogers, who was examining the ship's bridge with tactical precision. "Captain, I need to know, why are you really here? That entity said the Force summoned you. Does that mean anything to you?" Steve considered his words carefully. "Where we're from, there's no Force, but we've dealt with cosmic powers before. Infinity stones, objects of concentrated universal power. The Tesseract could manipulate space. The Mind Stone could control consciousness. If your Force is similar, maybe it recognized we've dealt with forces beyond normal comprehension." "The Mind Stone," Vision said, his forehead gem glowing softly. "This entity houses one such stone. Its power allows me to exist, to think, to feel. Perhaps the Force recognized a kindred cosmic artifact." Ahsoka reached out through the Force toward Vision and felt something. Not life, not exactly, but a presence that resonated with the Force without being part of it. "You're alive, but not through the Force. How is that possible?" "I am a synthesis of artificial intelligence, vibranium, and cosmic power," Vision explained. "Dr. Banner would say I'm a beautiful accident. I would say I simply am." Bruce Banner, currently in human form, joined the conversation. The Mind Stone gave Vision consciousness, but it also gave him something else. Perspective outside normal existence. He can see patterns, connections, possibilities that organic minds miss. If this Force is conscious, maybe that's what it saw in us. Outsiders who could approach problems differently. Thor stood at the viewport, watching hyperspace blur past, and spoke without turning. "In my 900 years, I have encountered many cosmic forces. The Bifrost connects realms. The Infinity Stones shaped reality. But this Force you speak of, It feels older, more fundamental, like the fabric beneath reality rather than reality itself. That's exactly what it is, Anakin confirmed. The Force is in everything. Every atom, every thought, every action. It connects all living things across the galaxy. Jedi and Sith tap into it, but the Force itself is beyond any individual's control. Except it controlled enough to pull us here, Natasha pointed out. She was sitting with Clint, both spies evaluating their new environment with professional paranoia. Which means it needs something from us, something it can't get from its own champions. The Jedi, Wanda said quietly, her chaos magic sense giving her insight others lacked. The Force can't use the Jedi against that entity because the Jedi draw power from the Force. They'd just feed it. The Force needed warriors who operate outside its system. That is a deeply disturbing thought, Ahsoka admitted. You're saying the Force itself is vulnerable? Everything's vulnerable, Clint said, checking his arrows. We learned that fighting Thanos, doesn't matter how powerful you are, there's always a weak spot. You just have to find it. Peter Parker, who'd been swinging around the cargo bay, testing his web shooters, dropped down beside them. So, question. You guys have a galactic war happening, right? Like Republic versus Separatists. Are we supposed to help with that, or are we just here for the ancient evil containment thing? The Clone Wars, Captain Rex said, approaching the group. The clone commander had been listening quietly, evaluating these strangers with soldiers' eyes. 3 years of fighting, trillions dead, no end in sight. He paused, then asked the question that had been bothering him. You said you're from Earth. We have records of a planet called Earth in the unknown regions. Pre-industrial civilization, no spaceflight. But you have technology that surpasses ours and powers we can't explain. How? Different Earth, Tony said. Different universe, different physics, different history. Our Earth developed differently, had different threats, faced different challenges. We're not from your past, we're from your parallel. Parallel universes, Rex repeated slowly. Sir, with respect, that sounds like something from a holovid. So did aliens until they invaded New York, Tony shot back. Trust me, once you accept that parallel universes exist, everything else gets easier. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Coruscant filled the viewport, an entire planet covered in cityscape, billions of lights stretching to every horizon. The Avengers collectively stopped talking, stunned by the sheer scale of urban development. That's an entire planet of cities, Peter breathed. How many people live there? About 1 trillion, Anakin said casually. Give or take a few billion, it's the galactic capital. Senate, Jedi Temple, military command. Everything important happens on Coruscant. 1 trillion people on one planet, Bruce muttered. The ecological strain alone must be catastrophic, Ahsoka confirmed. Coruscant imports everything. Food, water, raw materials. If the supply lines were ever cut, the planet would collapse in days. It's a strategic nightmare. T'Challa, who had been silent for most of the journey, finally spoke. In Wakanda, we learned that concentrating too much power in one place breeds corruption. A planet city where all galactic authority resides. That is a system designed to fail. You're not wrong, Anakin admitted, his voice carrying frustration. The Senate is gridlocked by bureaucracy. The Jedi are spread too thin fighting a war. And someone's manipulating both sides. We just can't prove who. Manipulation? Steve's tactical instincts activated. You're fighting a war, and you know someone's pulling strings. Why haven't you investigated? We have, Ahsoka said, but every lead goes cold. Every suspect has alibis. It's like fighting shadows. You know something's wrong, but you can't pin it down. Natasha and Clint exchanged glances. This was their territory: espionage, conspiracy, hidden enemies. "We've dealt with hidden threats before," Natasha said. "Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. for 70 years without us knowing. If someone's manipulating your war, they'll have left traces. You just need to know where to look." "And we're very good at looking," Clint added. The ship approached Coruscant's orbital traffic, joining thousands of vessels in carefully controlled flight paths. As they descended toward the Jedi Temple, Tony's sensors went crazy. "Friday, what am I reading?" "Massive energy signatures across the entire planet, sir. The concentration is highest near what appears to be a ziggurat structure, presumably the Jedi Temple. But there are anomalies, power readings that don't match the baseline force energy. Someone's hiding something big, and they've been very clever about it." "How big?" "Several city blocks, sir. Underground, heavily shielded, the kind of facility that takes years to build and massive resources to maintain. And it's directly beneath your destination." Tony's eyes narrowed. "Anakin, does the Jedi Temple have any secret underground facilities that might span several city blocks and use enough power to run a small country?" "What?" "No. The temple is ancient, but it's been surveyed hundreds of times. There's nothing like that." Anakin stopped, realization dawning. "Unless someone built it recently and shielded it from force detection, which would require technology the Jedi don't have, and resources on a scale that requires government-level funding," Bruce added, his scientist's mind already working through implications. "Someone with access to Republic resources, construction authority, and motivation to hide something massive from Force users." "The Chancellor," Ahsoka breathed. "He's the only one with that level of authority. But Chancellor Palpatine is what?" Steve asked, his experience with corrupt officials making him suspicious. "Trustworthy, beyond question? Someone who's been in power throughout this entire war while benefiting from emergency powers?" Anakin's face darkened. "You're saying Palpatine might be manipulating the war. You've been here 3 hours and you're accusing the Supreme Chancellor of treason." "We're saying someone is," Natasha corrected. "And in our experience, when you're looking for conspiracy, you start at the top and work down, because that's where the real power is." "We can debate this later," Wanda interjected, her chaos magic senses screaming warnings. "Right now, we have a bigger problem. That entity we imprisoned? I can still feel it. And it's laughing." Vision's Mind Stone pulsed with concern. "She's correct. The containment is holding, but the entity is not defeated. It's waiting, planning, and it's amused by our presence here." "Why would it be amused?" Ahsoka demanded. "Because," Thor said, his godly wisdom gleaned from 1,000 years of warfare, "it knows something we do not. The entity claimed it feeds on barriers between light and dark, life and death, reality and unreality. What if the greatest barrier it wants to consume isn't the Force itself, but the walls between universes?" "Then bringing us here," Steve realized with growing horror, "might be exactly what it wanted. We're living proof that dimensional barriers can be breached. If it studies us, learns from our displacement, it could break free of this universe entirely and spread to others," Vision finished, "including ours. The Force didn't summon us to stop the entity. It summoned us as bait." The ship landed at the Jedi Temple, and as the Avengers disembarked onto the landing platform, they were immediately surrounded by a full battalion of clone troopers, lightsaber-wielding Jedi masters, and the unmistakable sense that they'd just walked into something far more complicated than an ancient evil imprisonment. Master Mace Windu stood at the head of the greeting party, his expression stern and evaluating. Dimensional refugees, beings who can't be sensed through the Force. Warriors who imprisoned an entity we didn't even know existed. The Council will see you immediately." "We need to talk about whatever's hidden under your temple first," Tony said bluntly, "because my sensors say you're sitting on top of a massive secret facility, and that seems like something you should know about." Mace's hand moved to his lightsaber. "How could you possibly know about—" He stopped, realizing his mistake. "Come with me, all of you, and pray to whatever gods you worship that you have very good explanations." As they walked toward the temple, Peter leaned over to whisper to Tony, "Mr. Stark, did we just accidentally expose a government conspiracy 3 hours after arriving? Looks like it, kid. New record even for us. Are we going to be in trouble? Probably, but when has that ever stopped the Avengers?" The temple doors opened, and Earth's mightiest heroes walked into the heart of Jedi power, completely unaware that every step they took was being monitored by a Sith Lord who was very interested in these new variables that had appeared in his carefully orchestrated game. The Jedi Council chamber was designed to intimidate. 12 seats arranged in a circle, each occupied by a master whose wisdom spanned decades or centuries, all focused on whoever stood in the center. The Avengers walked into that center with the confidence of people who'd testified before the United Nations, argued with governments, and faced down cosmic tyrants. Mace Windu spoke first, his deep voice carrying absolute authority. "State your names and your purpose in this galaxy." Steve Rogers stepped forward. "I'm Captain Steve Rogers. We call ourselves the Avengers. We're heroes from a planet called Earth in a different universe. We didn't choose to come here. Something pulled us across dimensions, deposited us in what you call the Forgotten Realm, and we fought an entity that was trying to break free of its prison." Master Yoda's eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom. The Forgotten Realm. Abandoned for centuries it was. Know of it the Council does not. Yet appear there you did, at the exact moment needed. Coincidence? I think not. "We don't believe in coincidences either," Natasha added. "Where we're from, when something seems too convenient, it usually means someone's manipulating events. In this case, we think the Force itself brought us here." "The Force itself?" Ki-Adi-Mundi leaned forward skeptically. "The Force is not a sentient being that acts independently. It responds to the will of those who use it." "Then explain how we're here," Vision said, his synthetic voice carrying perfect logic. "We have no connection to your Force. No one in this galaxy could have known we existed, yet we were pulled from our universe at the precise moment an ancient evil was awakening. That requires intention and power beyond random chance." Plo Koon studied Vision with particular interest. "You are not organic, a droid, but not like any droid we've encountered. What are you?" "I am Vision, a synthetic being created through a combination of artificial intelligence, organic tissue, and the power of the Mind Stone." The gem in his forehead glowed softly. "This artifact grants me consciousness, perception, and abilities beyond normal parameters. In our universe, there were 6 such stones, each controlling a fundamental aspect of reality." The council chamber fell silent. Obi-Wan Kenobi, standing to the side as an observer, spoke carefully. "Artifacts that control reality itself. That sounds dangerously similar to Sith alchemy or ancient Force artifacts. Could these stones be connected to the Force?" "No," Wanda said, her chaos magic making her sensitive to cosmic energies. "The stones predate the universe itself. They were created at the Big Bang, the birth of reality. The Force is contained within this universe. The stones exist beyond it." "Then how can we trust you?" Mace demanded. "You wield powers beyond our understanding, claim to come from another reality, and arrive at the exact moment when an ancient threat awakens. For all we know, you could be agents of that very darkness. If we were agents of darkness, Thor said, his voice carrying divine authority, why would we have imprisoned it? I am Thor, son of Odin, god of thunder and king of Asgard. In my 9 centuries of life, I have fought enemies across realms. I know evil when I face it. That entity was darkness incarnate. We fought it. We contained it. We saved your galaxy from being consumed. Yet in doing so, Master Shakti observed, you may have created a worse problem. Anakin and Ahsoka's report states the entity claimed you are proof that dimensional barriers can be breached. If it learns from your presence here, it could spread beyond this galaxy, Bruce Banner finished. We know. We've been thinking about that for the entire trip here. But the question isn't whether bringing us here was dangerous. The question is why the Force thought we were necessary, despite that risk. Yoda closed his eyes in deep meditation. Sense something? I do. A disturbance, long hidden. The forgotten realm, abandoned it was, for reasons lost to history. But forgotten, the reason was not. Erased, the knowledge was, deliberately. Someone didn't want you to know about that entity, Tony Stark said, his genius intellect immediately spotting the conspiracy. Which means someone knew it existed, knew it was dangerous, and decided hiding that information was more important than protecting the galaxy from it. Who has the authority to erase Jedi records? The Council Masters exchanged uncomfortable glances. Obi-Wan answered quietly. Only the Council itself, the Jedi Archives, or the Supreme Chancellor in matters of galactic security. Palpatine, Steve said immediately. You keep mentioning him. He's your head of government, correct? And he's been in power throughout this war. For over a decade, Mace confirmed. He was granted emergency powers at the start of the Clone Wars and has accumulated more authority with each passing year. But Chancellor Palpatine is a dedicated public servant who has had more than enough time to manipulate your entire government, Natasha interrupted. We've seen this before. When we came here, Tony's AI detected a massive hidden facility beneath this temple. Who authorized construction? Who has the resources? Who benefits from the Jedi being kept in the dark about threats literally under their feet? That's treason talk, Ki-Adi-Mundi warned. Accusing the Supreme Chancellor without evidence. Evidence? Tony activated a holographic projector from his armor, displaying Friday's scans. Here's your evidence. Look at this. Power consumption patterns, construction timelines, resource allocation. Someone built a city-sized facility underneath your temple during the past 3 years. The same 3 years you've been fighting this war. The same 3 years you've been distracted, spread thin, unable to investigate your own home. The holographic data painted a damning picture. Mace Windu's expression darkened as he processed the implications. If this is true, if someone built a secret facility beneath the temple without our knowledge, it represents a security breach of catastrophic proportions. It represents more than that, T'Challa said, speaking for the first time since entering the council chamber. In Wakanda, we learned that hidden facilities and secret programs are how tyrants prepare for coups. You build power structures in darkness, wait for the right moment, then strike when your enemies are most vulnerable. Your Jedi Order is that enemy. The Jedi have no enemies within the Republic, Shakti insisted. We serve the Senate, we protect the people. And how many senators trust you? Clint asked bluntly. How many see you as peacekeepers versus seeing you as generals with armies? We've been here 3 hours and even we can see the problem. You're fighting a war that's turning you into exactly what people fear. Religious warriors with military power. Ahsoka standing beside Anakin, spoke up despite not being a council member. "They're right, masters. I've felt it, the way civilians look at us now. Fear mixed with respect. We're not peacekeepers anymore, we're soldiers, and soldiers answer to someone." "We answer to the Republic," Mace said firmly. "Do you?" Peter Parker asked, his youthful voice carrying surprising wisdom. "Because from what we've seen, the Republic answers to Palpatine, which means you answer to Palpatine. And if Palpatine's the one who built that facility, or authorized it, or knows about it and didn't tell you, then you're not serving the Republic, you're serving him." "These are serious accusations," Plo Koon said, "but they raise valid questions. Master Windu, I move that we investigate the alleged facility immediately." "Seconded," Obi-Wan added. "If there's even a possibility that our temple has been compromised." "Then investigate we must," Yoda concluded. "But careful we must be. If right these Avengers are, if Palpatine truly has hidden something beneath our home, then face we do not just conspiracy. Face we do betrayal from the highest levels of government." "We've faced worse," Steve said. "In our world, we discovered Hydra, a terrorist organization, had been hiding inside our own intelligence agency for 70 years. The people we trusted most were our greatest enemies. But we exposed them, fought them, and won. If your Chancellor is dirty, we'll help you prove it." "And if he's not?" Mace challenged. "If you're wrong and we've just committed treason by investigating our own government, based on the word of dimensional refugees we met hours ago, then we'll face consequences," Steve replied without hesitation. "But I'd rather risk being wrong about a conspiracy than be right and do nothing. That's what heroes do." Yoda studied the Avengers for a long moment, his 800-year-old wisdom seeing something in them that gave him hope. "Agree, I do. Investigate we shall, but together we do. This, Jedi and Avengers as allies. If face we must a Sith Lord hiding in plain sight, then need we do. Warriors who think differently than Jedi." "A Sith Lord?" Tony asked. "I'm guessing that's bad." "The Sith were the ancient enemies of the Jedi," Obi-Wan explained. "They draw power from the dark side of the Force, emotion, passion, aggression. We believed them extinct for 1,000 years, but 10 years ago they revealed themselves. We killed one, but the rule of two suggests there's always a master and an apprentice. Somewhere a Sith master is manipulating events." "And you think it's Palpatine," Wanda said, her chaos magic sense reading the fear in the room. "You're all thinking it, but nobody wants to say it aloud because it's too terrible to consider." "Because if the Supreme Chancellor is a Sith Lord," Anakin said, his voice strained, "then we've been helping him for years. Every battle we fought, every power we granted him, every time we trusted his guidance, we'd have been serving the enemy all along." "That's exactly how infiltration works," Natasha said quietly. "The closer the enemy gets, the harder they are to see. Because who suspects their friend, their mentor, the person who's always been there, always been helpful, always been on your side, until suddenly they're not, and by then, it's too late." "Then we don't let it be too late," Steve decided. "We investigate now, find proof, expose the truth, and if Palpatine is your Sith Lord, we do what we came here to do. We stop him." "Easier said than done," Mace warned. "If Palpatine has been manipulating the Republic for years, he'll have contingencies, defenses, loyal followers. Exposing him could trigger civil war." "Then we'd better be smart about it," Bruce said. "Gather evidence quietly, build an ironclad case. Make sure that when we strike, there's no room for doubt or political maneuvering." "Speaking of which," Tony added, "we should probably address the elephant in the room, or rather the ancient evil in the prison. That entity isn't going to stay contained forever. It's been waiting millennia. It can wait a bit longer while it studies us, learns about dimensional travel, and prepares for its next escape attempt. We need to deal with your Sith Lord problem before it becomes a galaxy-consuming entity problem. Yoda nodded slowly. Wise, this plan is. 2 threats we face. 1 immediate, Sith Lord in shadows. 1 future, entity in prison. Deal with first we must. Before strong enough for second, we are. Then we have a plan, Steve said. We investigate Palpatine, gather evidence, and prepare for whatever comes next. But we do it carefully. No accusations without proof. No confrontations until we're ready. And we work together, Jedi and Avengers, because that's the only way we win. Agreed, Mace said, though his expression showed he still had reservations. But understand this, Avengers. If you're wrong, if Palpatine is innocent, and we've committed treason, I will personally ensure you face justice. We wouldn't expect anything less, Steve replied. Now, shall we go check out that secret facility before whoever built it realizes we know it exists? The Jedi Council rose as one, lightsabers at the ready, and the Avengers fell into formation beside them. 2 groups of heroes from different universes united by a common purpose, exposing darkness wherever it hid. In his office across Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine felt a disturbance in the Force, a sense that variables he hadn't accounted for were moving pieces on his carefully arranged board. He smiled. Unknown variables made the game interesting, and Darth Sidious had been playing this game for far too long to be worried by a few dimensional refugees. Let them investigate. Let them search. By the time they found anything, it would be too late. Order 66 was ready. The clone army was his. And soon, very soon, the Jedi Order and these troublesome Avengers would learn what it meant to oppose a Sith Lord who'd been planning for decades. But in the Forgotten Realm, the imprisoned entity laughed in its darkness. The Jedi hunted Sith. The Sith played power games. And the Avengers investigated conspiracies, all of them blind to the real threat, the thing that fed on barriers that grew stronger with each moment. The dimensional refugees remained in this universe that was slowly, patiently learning how to do what they'd done accidentally, how to cross between realities, and when it finally broke free, it wouldn't just consume this galaxy, it would consume them all. The descent into the hidden facility beneath the Jedi Temple was tense and silent. Tony Stark led the way, his armor's sensors mapping corridors that shouldn't exist, following power signatures that painted a picture of massive underground construction. Behind him came Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka, their lightsabers ignited and ready. The rest of the Avengers brought up the rear, weapons drawn, senses alert. Friday status report, Tony whispered. The facility extends for approximately 3 kilometers in multiple directions, sir. I'm detecting barracks, training rooms, armories, and what appears to be a throne room at the center. Life signs are minimal, perhaps 50 individuals, all concentrated near the core. They appear to be in some form of stasis or deep meditation. 50 soldiers hidden under the Jedi Temple, Natasha said quietly. That's an invasion force waiting to activate. Or an execution squad, Clint added grimly. Plant your assassins right under the target's nose, wait for the signal, strike when they least expect it. They reached a massive blast door inscribed with symbols that made even the Jedi recoil. Obi-Wan studied them with growing horror. Sith script, ancient Sith script. This facility wasn't just built recently. It's using designs from the old Republic era, when the Sith Empire openly warred with the Jedi. Can you read it? Steve asked. Roughly, it says, "Here lies the power that will burn the light and rule the ashes." That's not subtle about its purpose. Subtlety is overrated when you're building a secret murder base, Tony muttered. He placed his hand on the door, and his armor's interface systems went to work. Hacking the access controls now. This is actually pretty sophisticated encryption for something built with ancient designs. Whoever did this knew both old Sith methods and modern Republic security. That's a very specific skill set. The Chancellor, Anakin said, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger. He's a scholar of Republic history. He's advised the Senate on ancient texts. He'd have access to both knowledge bases. Still circumstantial, Mace warned. We need direct evidence linking Palpatine to... The door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, revealing a corridor that looked like it belonged in a Sith temple rather than beneath the Jedi's sacred home. Red lighting, dark stone, and an atmosphere thick with what Force sensitives recognized immediately as concentrated dark side energy. This is wrong, Ahsoka whispered, her mantrals sensing vibrations in the Force. This much darkness, this close to the temple. How did we never feel it? Shielding, Wanda said, her chaos magic detecting residual enchantments. Someone's been using both technology and dark side rituals to hide this place from Force detection. The walls are inscribed with suppression runes, very old, very powerful, and very deliberately placed to create a blind spot. Like a Faraday cage for the Force, Bruce observed, his scientific mind making the connection. Electromagnetic shielding blocks EM radiation. This blocks Force energy, brilliant in a terrifying sort of way. They moved deeper into the facility, passing rooms that revealed its true purpose. Barracks filled with red-armored guards in stasis pods. Training rooms with combat droids configured to mimic Jedi fighting styles. Armories stocked with weapons specifically designed to kill Force users. Cortosis-weaved blades that could short-circuit lightsabers, sonic weapons that disrupted concentration, and chemical agents that targeted midichlorians. This isn't just an assassination force, Obi-Wan said, his voice hollow. This is a Jedi-killing army. Every weapon, every tactic, every design choice. It's all optimized to murder us. How long has this been here? Anakin demanded. Tony checked his readings. Construction dates show this facility was built in stages over the past decade. The oldest sections date back to just before the Clone Wars started. The newest additions are less than 6 months old. Someone's been steadily preparing for this since before the war began. The Clone Wars started 3 years ago, Mace said slowly. If this facility predates the war, that means someone was planning to eliminate the Jedi Order before the war even existed, which means the war was created as cover, Steve finished, his tactical mind seeing the bigger picture. You build your secret murder base while everyone's distracted by the war. You position Jedi across the galaxy as generals, isolated with clone armies. Then when you're ready, you activate your forces here and give the kill order to the clones simultaneously. The Jedi Order is eliminated in one coordinated strike. Order 66, Vision said, his Mind Stone allowing him to process data faster than organic minds. I've been analyzing clone trooper neural patterns since we arrived. There are anomalies, organic computer chips integrated into their brains that could override conscious thought with pre-programmed commands. The technology is sophisticated enough that even the clones don't know they're carrying it. The revelation hit the Jedi like a physical blow. Anakin's hand went to his lightsaber, his breathing ragged. The clones, Rex, Cody, all of them, they've been programmed to kill us, and we never checked? We never questioned where an entire army came from or who really paid for it? You were desperate, Natasha said, not unkindly. A crisis appeared, the separatist threat. A solution appeared. The clone army. You didn't have time to ask questions because the galaxy was burning. That's how infiltration works. Create the problem, provide the solution, and make sure everyone's too busy surviving to notice the trap closing around them. They reached the throne room, a massive chamber with a seat of black stone, elevated on a pyramid of steps. Holographic displays showed surveillance feeds from across the galaxy, tracking Jedi positions, monitoring Republic military assets, and displaying what looked like countdown timers for various operations. "This is a command center," T'Challa observed, his strategic mind recognizing military planning at the highest level. Whoever sits in that throne controls not just this facility, but coordinates galaxy-wide operations. This is where your conspiracy is managed. Thor approached the throne, his divine senses detecting power beyond technology. Dark magic has been worked here. Blood sacrifices, Sith rituals. Whoever built this place has been feeding the dark side for years, growing stronger while hidden beneath your very noses. "Can we trace who built it?" Obi-Wan asked desperately. "Financial records, construction permits, anything that leads directly to..." "Already on it," Tony said, his armor interfacing with the facility's computer systems. "Friday, pull everything. Follow the money, the authorization codes, the biometric access logs. Who's been coming here?" "Sir, the facility's security is concerning. Multiple access attempts by high-level Republic officials, but only one individual has unrestricted access to all areas, including the throne room. Biometric signature matches." "Oh no!" "What?" Mace demanded. Tony's faceplate retracted, revealing an expression of grim vindication. "Supreme Chancellor Sheev Palpatine. He's been accessing this facility an average of 3 times per week for the past decade. The computer logs show him personally overseeing the installation of the stasis pods, programming the combat droids, and..." He paused, reading something that made his blood run cold. "He's been down here as recently as yesterday." The Jedi Council members exchanged looks of horror and betrayal. Anakin's voice was barely a whisper. "Yesterday, while we were investigating the Forgotten Realm, while we were meeting the Avengers, he was here in a secret Sith temple beneath our home, preparing to murder us all." "It's not just murder," Peter Parker said, his spider sense screaming warnings as he examined the holographic displays. "Look at these timers. They're counting down to something, multiple somethings, across the entire galaxy. Mr. Stark, what am I looking at?" Tony's genius intellect processed the data in seconds. Contingencies, hundreds of them. Automated systems designed to activate if Palpatine is exposed, captured, or killed. Biological weapons, droid armies, orbital bombardments. He's rigged the entire galaxy with dead man's switches. If we move against him without shutting these down first, millions die. That's why he's so confident, Bruce realized. He knows that even if we discover his identity, we can't act without triggering mass casualties. He's made himself untouchable through mutually assured destruction. Wanda's hands glowed with chaos magic as she examined the throne itself. There's more. This throne is a ritual focus. It's been used to channel dark side energy for years, feeding something. Not just Palpatine's power, but something else. Something far away. Her eyes widened. The entity. The thing we imprisoned. Palpatine's been feeding it. "Why would he feed something that wants to consume the Force?" Ahsoka asked. "Because he's arrogant enough to think he can control it," Vision said, his mind stone showing him connections others missed. "Examine the pattern. Palpatine creates war to gain power. He builds a secret facility to eliminate his enemies. He feeds an ancient evil to make the Force itself desperate enough to summon outside help. But that outside help, us, proves dimensional barriers can be breached. knowledge Palpatine can use. He's not just trying to rule the galaxy, Steve said, horror dawning. He's trying to become immortal. If he can cross dimensions like we did, he can escape death itself, jump from reality to reality, consuming force energy in each one, never staying long enough to be killed. That's insane, Obi-Wan protested. No being has that kind of power, not even the Sith at their height. He does now, Merlin's voice echoed through the chamber. Everyone spun to find the young warlock standing in the doorway, his eyes blazing gold with prophetic visions. Harry Potter stood beside him, wand raised, having apparently followed them through magical means. "Merlin?" Anakin said, surprised. "Harry, how did you—" "We felt the darkness," Harry said grimly. "Even from our quarters in the temple, we could sense something wrong beneath us. Used a tracking charm to follow you." He looked at the throne room with an expression that spoke of having seen similar horrors before. "This is exactly like Voldemort's hidden chambers. The ritual setup, the dark magic focus, the surveillance systems. Palpatine is your Dark Lord." Merlin's eyes were still glowing, lost in visions of possible futures. "I see him, Darth Sidious. That's his Sith name. He's been planning this for 50 years, started as a senator, manipulated his way to chancellor, orchestrated the Clone Wars, and positioned himself to transform the Republic into an empire with him as immortal emperor. But the dimensional breach, our arrival and the Avengers, gave him a new ambition: universal conquest, reality-spanning domination. "Can we stop him?" Mace asked. Merlin's eyes returned to normal, and his expression was grim. "I see two futures. In one, we expose him too early. The contingencies activate, billions die, the galaxy burns, the entity breaks free in the chaos, and consumes multiple realities. In the other future, we move carefully, dismantle his contingencies first, build ironclad evidence, then expose him when he can't trigger his doomsday weapons." "How long do we have?" Steve asked. 3 days, Harry said, having also seen the visions through his connection to the Deathly Hallows. "In 3 days, Palpatine plans to give Order 66. The clone army will execute every Jedi simultaneously. The soldiers in this facility will activate and kill any Jedi on Coruscant. And he'll declare himself Emperor of the Galaxy. We have 72 hours to stop a Sith Lord who's been planning this for half a century." Tony activated his repulsors, his engineer's mind already working through solutions. "Then we'd better get started. Friday, copy every file in this facility, every schematic, every contingency plan, every access code. We're going to tear down Palpatine's empire before he even knows we found it. And while we're doing that," Natasha added, "we need to figure out how to deactivate the inhibitor chips in the clone army. Because if we expose Palpatine and he gives Order 66 out of spite, the Jedi Order dies anyway." "I can help with that," Merlin said, his eyes flashing gold again. "I've been studying your clone troopers' biology. The chips are organic technological hybrids designed to be undetectable. But magic doesn't care about design parameters. I can create a spell that deactivates them en masse. It'll take time to prepare, and I'll need help channeling that much power across an entire planet, but it's possible." "Wanda and I can help," Vision offered. "Chaos magic and the Mind Stone working together should be able to amplify your spell across Coruscant. If we can free the clones here, we can prevent the immediate threat." "What about the entity?" Ahsoka asked. "It's still imprisoned, still learning, still waiting. If we're dealing with Palpatine, who's watching it?" "We are," Thor said, gesturing to include Hulk, Spider-Man, Black Panther, Hawkeye, and himself. "Half the Avengers will monitor the Forgotten Realm, while the other half helps you dismantle Palpatine's conspiracy. If the entity tries to break free, we'll be there to stop it." Mace Windu looked at the gathered heroes, Jedi, Avengers, and wizards, and made a decision that would define the galaxy's future. "Very well. We have 3 days to save the Jedi Order, expose a Sith Lord, prevent a genocide, and make sure an ancient evil doesn't consume reality itself. Standard Tuesday for you Avengers, I assume." "Actually, this is pretty intense even for us," Tony admitted. "Usually we get at least a week to save the world. 3 days is rush job territory." "Then we'd better not waste time," Steve said, taking command with natural authority. "Teams, Tony, Vision, Wanda, and Merlin, you're on the inhibitor chip problem. Natasha, Clint, Harry, and Obi-Wan, you're gathering evidence against Palpatine that'll hold up under legal scrutiny. Anakin, Ahsoka, Bruce, and I will start dismantling the contingency systems. Thor, T'Challa, Peter, Mace, and Plo Koon, you're on entity watch in the Forgotten Realm. Questions?" "Just one," Anakin said, looking at Steve with newfound respect. "In 3 days, when we've stopped Palpatine and saved the galaxy, what happens to you Avengers? Can you get home?" "Honestly," Steve admitted, "we don't know. The Force brought us here. Whether it can send us back is another question entirely. But that's a problem for after we save your galaxy. First things first." "Spoken like a true soldier," Mace said. "Very well, Captain Rogers. The Jedi Order will follow your lead. May the Force be with us all." "And may justice prevail," Harry added, his wand already glowing with preparation spells. As teams dispersed to their assigned tasks, none of them noticed the small surveillance droid hidden in the throne room's shadows, a droid that had been quietly recording everything, transmitting data directly to a private office, where a chancellor smiled his grandfatherly smile and revised his plans to account for dimensional refugees who thought they could outmaneuver a Sith Lord. "Interesting," Darth Sidious murmured. "They found my facility, predictable, but they think they have 3 days. How adorable. They don't realize I've been ready to execute Order 66 for months. I was just waiting for the perfect moment." He pressed a button on his desk, and across the galaxy, clone troopers felt a slight pressure in their heads. Not the full activation of Order 66, but a test signal, a warning that their true purpose was about to be revealed. "Let them plan," Sidious said to the empty office. "Let them scheme. Let them think they can stop me. It will make their failure all the more delicious." 3 days. 72 hours. The countdown to genocide had begun, and neither the Jedi nor the Avengers knew that their enemy was already 3 steps ahead. The next 48 hours were a blur of coordinated chaos. In a secured laboratory deep within the Jedi Temple, Tony Stark worked alongside Vision, Wanda, and Merlin, surrounding a holographic display of clone trooper neurology that would have made any Republic scientist weep with envy. "Okay, let me see if I've got this straight," Tony said, manipulating the hologram with arc reactor-powered gestures. "The inhibitor chips are grown organically during the cloning process, integrated at the cellular level into the brain's command centers. They're designed to respond to a specific frequency broadcast, Order 66, that overrides conscious thought and forces the clones to execute their Jedi commanders. Is that about right?" "Horrifyingly accurate," Vision confirmed, his mind stone allowing him to process biological data as easily as computer code. "The chips are biological technology, organic circuitry that mimics neural pathways. To the clones' immune systems, they appear natural. To medical scans, they're invisible. And to override their function without killing the host requires precision that exceeds current Republic medical capabilities." "But not magical capabilities," Merlin said, his eyes glowing gold as he studied the hologram, through a lens of 800-year-old arcane knowledge. Technology fails where magic succeeds. The chips may be biological, but they're still artificial constructs, and artificial constructs can be unmade. You're talking about a spell that affects millions of individuals simultaneously, Wanda cautioned, her chaos magic sensing the enormity of what they were attempting. The power requirements alone are astronomical, Merlin agreed, which is why I can't do it alone. But if I channel the spell through you, Wanda, and Vision amplifies it with the Mind Stone, while Tony provides technological boost through his arc reactor, we might be able to create a resonance field that blankets the entire planet. Tony's eyes lit up with the fervor of a genius seeing a perfect solution. A magic tech hybrid. The spell provides the instruction set. Wanda's chaos magic gives it reality warping power. Vision's Mind Stone gives it consciousness targeting precision. And my arc reactor provides the raw energy to broadcast it planet-wide. Friday, run the simulations. Can we pull this off? Theoretically, yes, sir, Friday replied. However, the margin for error is approximately 0.03%. If any component fails, or if the synchronization is off by even microseconds, the resonance cascade could cause catastrophic neural damage to every clone trooper on Coruscant. So we'd free them from mind control by giving them all brain damage, Tony summarized. Not ideal. Then we don't fail, Merlin said simply. I've cast spells that affected thousands. With proper focus and the right amplifiers, millions is just a matter of scale. You're very confident for someone attempting something that's never been done, Vision observed. I once altered the memory of an entire kingdom to forget magic existed, Merlin replied. Compared to that, disabling some organic circuits is child's play. He paused. Extremely dangerous, potentially fatal, galaxy fate-deciding child's play, but still. Across the temple, in the archives, Natasha Romanoff, Clint Barton, Harry Potter, and Obi-Wan Kenobi were engaged in a different kind of battle, information warfare. Jocasta Nu, the archive's keeper, had reluctantly granted them access to classified Republic records after Obi-Wan invoked Emergency Council authority. The Chancellor's financial records are a maze, Natasha said, her spy's instincts navigating corporate shell games that would have baffled accountants. Money flows in from corporations, gets laundered through banking networks, emerges as anonymous donations to various causes, then disappears into black budget projects. Which is exactly how Hydra funded operations inside S.H.I.E.L.D., Clint added, comparing data across multiple screens. Create enough layers of separation that even if investigators find one shell company, they can't trace it back to the source. But there's always a pattern, always a tell. Found one, Harry said, his aura training in criminal investigation proving invaluable. Look at the timing. Every major deposit into these shell companies happens exactly one day before a significant military contract gets approved. Someone's getting advanced knowledge of government spending and positioning themselves to profit. That's insider trading on a galactic scale, Obi-Wan said, his diplomatic experience recognizing corruption when he saw it. But proving Palpatine personally authorized it is easier than you think, Natasha interrupted, pulling up biometric data. Every transaction requires authorization codes, and the authorization codes for these particular transactions, they're tied to Chancellor-level security clearance. There are only 3 people in the entire Republic with that clearance: Palpatine, his Vice Chair Mas Amedda, and the Senate Intelligence Oversight Director. And the Oversight Director is, Harry prompted. Dead, Clint said flatly. Killed in a speeder accident 2 years ago. Very convenient accident that happened the day after he requested an audit of black budget spending. So we're down to Palpatine or his aide, Obi-Wan concluded. But even if Mas Amedda is involved, he doesn't have the authority to commission clone armies or build secret facilities. Only the Supreme Chancellor could authorize that. Harry pulled out his wand and cast a spell that made the others flinch. A golden thread of light that connected data points across the holographic display, revealing patterns invisible to normal analysis. Hominum Revelio, modified for digital signatures instead of people. Look, every decision point, every authorization, every critical moment in this conspiracy has Palpatine's personal biometric signature. Not delegated, not authorized. Through aides, him, personally, for 10 years. That's damning, Obi-Wan breathed. With this evidence, we could bring charges before the Senate, demand investigation, force his removal from office where he has emergency powers and control of the military, Natasha countered. No, we need more than financial evidence. We need proof of his Sith identity. We need to catch him red-handed using the dark side, or confessing his true purpose, or activating Order 66. Otherwise, he'll claim this is all accounting errors, blame subordinates, and use his political capital to bury the investigation. Then we make him confess, Harry said, his experience confronting dark wizards making him pragmatic about methods. I've got Veritaserum, a truth potion that compels honesty. 3 drops in his drink and he'll answer any question truthfully. Obi-Wan struggled with the ethics. That's essentially torture, violating free will through chemical means. It's justice, Harry corrected. Voldemort killed thousands and would have killed millions more if we'd been squeamish about methods. Sometimes you have to bend the rules to stop someone who's broken every rule that ever existed. The boy's got a point, Clint said. We're not talking about some petty criminal. We're talking about a Sith Lord who's orchestrated a genocide. If a truth potion gets him talking, I'll hold him down while Harry pours it myself. Meanwhile, in the facility beneath the temple, Steve Rogers, Anakin Skywalker, Ahsoka Tano, and Bruce Banner were systematically dismantling Palpatine's contingency systems. Each room they cleared revealed new horrors, enough bioweapons to sterilize planets, droid armies in storage waiting for activation signals, and worst of all, countdown timers linked to orbital platforms that could rain destruction on civilian populations. This is genocide on an industrial scale, Bruce said, his horror evident even in Smart Hulk form. He didn't just plan to kill the Jedi, he's got contingencies to kill anyone who might oppose him. Entire planets marked for destruction if they don't immediately swear loyalty to his empire. And we're supposed to disarm all of this in 3 days? Anakin asked, his mechanical hand clenching into a fist. There are dozens of systems, hundreds of triggers, thousands of ways this could go wrong. Then we get help, Steve decided. He activated his comm. Stark, we need your expertise down here. We're looking at weapons systems beyond our ability to safely disarm. Kind of busy preventing clone-induced genocide, Tony replied. But I'll send you a remote interface. Friday can walk you through disarmament procedures. She's got experience with Stark Industries weapons, which means she knows how megalomaniacs think when they're building doomsday devices. That's oddly specific, Ahsoka observed. You'd be surprised how often it comes up, Steve muttered. Friday, we're looking at a biological weapon, designated Project Blackwing. It's described as a reanimation virus. Walk us through how to safely contain it. Sir, that designation suggests the weapon converts dead organic matter into hostile reanimated corpses, Friday replied. Essentially a zombie plague. I recommend immediate destruction rather than containment. Arc reactor level heat should be sufficient to denature the viral proteins. We're talking about destroying potential evidence, Anakin protested. We're talking about preventing a zombie apocalypse, Bruce countered. Trust me, I've dealt with enough gamma-mutated creatures to know that biological weapons should be destroyed, not studied. Steve, I'll handle this one. You and the kids focus on the droid armies. I'm not a kid, Ahsoka protested. You're 16, Bruce replied gently. To someone who's been alive as long as I've been dealing with the Hulk, that's definitely still a kid. No offense. Some taken, Ahsoka muttered, but she followed Steve and Anakin to the droid storage facility. What they found made even Steve Rogers, a man who'd fought in World War II and the Battle of New York, pause in shock. Rows upon rows of deactivated battle droids, super battle droids, destroyer droids, and something new. Humanoid droids with lightsaber-resistant cortosis, weaving and programming specifically designed to hunt and kill Force users. He built Jedi killer droids, Anakin said, his voice hollow, thousands of them, all hidden under our temple, waiting for the activation signal. Which we're going to make sure never comes, Steve said firmly. Friday, can we wipe their programming? Render them inert? Negative, Captain. The droids are hardwired with multiple redundant activation protocols. Any attempt to erase their core programming will trigger self-destruct sequences that could collapse this section of the facility and half the temple above it. Then we remove them, Steve decided. Anakin, can you arrange transport? Military-grade shipping that won't ask questions. Yes, Anakin said slowly. Clone logistics can move equipment without Senate oversight. But where are we moving thousands of killer droids to? Somewhere they can't hurt anyone, Steve replied. The middle of a sun, if necessary. These weapons are too dangerous to exist. Palpatine created them for murder. We're going to make sure they never fulfill that purpose. In the Forgotten Realm, Thor, T'Challa, Peter Parker, Mace Windu, and Plo Koon stood watch over the entity's prison. The ruins hummed with barely contained dark energy, and the entity's presence could be felt even through the containment field, a psychic pressure that whispered promises and threats in equal measure. It's getting stronger, Plo Koon observed, his force senses more acute than most. The containment is holding, but the entity is testing it, probing for weaknesses. Let it probe, Thor said. Stormbreaker returned to his hand through mystical connection. I have fought beings who claimed to be unkillable. They all discovered they were wrong when faced with Asgardian determination. This isn't a being you can fight with axes and lightning, Mace warned. The entity is conceptual as much as physical. It feeds on barriers, on division, on the spaces between things. Attacking it with force only gives it more to consume. Then how do we stop it if it breaks free? Peter asked nervously, his spider sense constantly tingling in the entity's presence. We don't stop it, T'Challa said quietly. We starve it. The entity feeds on barriers, the walls between realities, between light and dark, between life and death. If we remove those barriers, make everything unified, it has nothing to consume. That's brilliant, Mace admitted, but also impossible. How do you unify light and dark without destroying both? How do you remove the barrier between life and death without ending existence itself? You don't, Wanda's voice crackled through their comms, but I might be able to. Chaos magic is about rewriting reality's rules. If the entity feeds on barriers, I can make those barriers irrelevant, at least temporarily, long enough to trap it in a reality where it has no food source. That sounds incredibly dangerous, Peter said. It is, Wanda agreed. If I miscalculate, I could accidentally unify our reality in ways that would be bad. Really, really bad. End of everything bad. Then we hope it doesn't come to that, Mace decided. For now, we maintain the watch. If the entity makes a move, we call for reinforcements. All of us working together might be able to contain it long enough for Wanda to work her reality manipulation. Back on Coruscant, as the second day of their 72-hour countdown drew to a close, the various teams reconvened to share progress. The news was mixed. "We can deactivate the inhibitor chips," Tony announced, "but we only get one shot. The spell has to hit every clone on Coruscant simultaneously, or some will execute Order 66 before we can stop them. We're talking about a window of less than 3 seconds for complete planetary coverage." "We have financial evidence linking Palpatine to the conspiracy," Natasha reported, "but not proof of his Sith identity. We need that confession, which means using Harry's truth potion or catching him in the act of using the dark side." "The contingency systems are being dismantled," Steve added, "but there are too many. We've disabled maybe 40%. The rest are still active and could be triggered remotely if Palpatine suspects we're onto him." "So we're running out of time," Anakin summarized grimly. "We have evidence, but not enough. We have a plan, but it's untested. And we're up against a Sith Lord who's been planning this for 50 years. What are our odds?" "Historically," Tony said, "the Avengers do our best work when the odds are terrible. So I'd say we're right where we need to be." "Comforting," Ahsoka muttered. "It wasn't meant to be," Tony replied. "It was meant to be true. Now, who wants to help me finish building a magic tech hybrid that could either save millions of lives or accidentally lobotomize an entire clone army? Show of hands?" Nobody raised their hand. "That's what I thought," Tony sighed. "All right, let's get back to work. We've got one more day to save the galaxy, and if we fail, at least we'll go down swinging." But in his private office, Darth Sidious was already making his final preparations. He'd watched their efforts with growing amusement. The Avengers and Jedi working together, dismantling his contingencies, building their clever spell, gathering their evidence, all of it meaningless. Because tomorrow, at precisely 800 hours, he would attend the Senate as scheduled, deliver a speech about the war's progress, and during that speech, while every Jedi in the temple and every senator in the chamber was watching, he would give Order 66, not in 3 days, tomorrow, and there was nothing they could do to stop him. The final day began with an emergency meeting in the Jedi Council chamber. Every member of the makeshift task force, Avengers, Jedi, and Wizards, gathered around a holographic display showing Palpatine's public schedule. What they saw made their blood run cold. "He's addressing the full Senate this morning," Obi-Wan said, his voice tight with tension. "In 2 hours, a speech about the future of the Republic and final victory in the Clone Wars. The entire Jedi Council is required to attend as honored guests." "It's a trap," Natasha said immediately. "He's gathering all his targets in one place. Jedi in the Senate chamber, clones throughout Coruscant, perfect positioning for simultaneous execution." "But we still have a day," Anakin protested. "Our intelligence said 3 days. Why would he move early?" "Because he knows we found his facility," Harry said grimly. "Dark wizards always have surveillance, always have contingencies for their contingencies. The moment we entered that throne room, he knew, and he's been watching us scramble to stop him ever since." Tony pulled up surveillance footage from the hidden facility. "Friday, run forensic analysis on this footage. Show me what we missed." The AI highlighted a small object in the corner of the throne room, barely visible, easily overlooked, but unmistakably present. "Surveillance droid, sir. Model designed for covert observation. It's been transmitting data continuously since you entered the facility 48 hours ago." "So Palpatine knows everything," Steve said, his tactical mind immediately adjusting to the changed situation. "He knows we found the facility. He knows we're dismantling his contingencies. He knows about the inhibitor chip spell, and he's moved his timeline up to strike before we're ready. Then we make ourselves ready, Merlin said, his eyes blazing gold with prophetic urgency. The spell to deactivate the chips. It's not complete, but it's functional. We activate it now, during Palpatine's speech. Hit every clone on Coruscant before he can give the order. That's still risky, Vision cautioned. We haven't had time to properly test the resonance field. The margin for error is better than the margin for letting every clone execute their Jedi commanders, Wanda interrupted. We work with what we have. It's all we've ever been able to do. Mace Windu stood, his decision made. Very well. Here's what we do. The Council attends the Senate session as required. We can't avoid it without tipping our hand that we know his plan. But half the Avengers come with us, hidden and ready to act. The other half stays here with Merlin, Wanda, and Vision to activate the inhibitor chip spell the moment Palpatine makes his move. What about the evidence? Ahsoka asked. Do we confront him publicly? Accuse him in front of the entire Senate? No, Harry said, pulling out his vial of Veritaserum. We let him condemn himself. Natasha, you're the best infiltrator. Can you dose his drink before the speech? 3 drops. That's all it takes. In a Senate chamber filled with security guards and Jedi. Natasha's smile was dangerous. Please, I've infiltrated better protected targets while wearing high heels and an evening gown. This is Tuesday morning for me. Then that's our play, Steve decided. Natasha doses Palpatine with the truth serum. Mace and the Council ask pointed questions during the speech. Palpatine, unable to lie, exposes himself. We activate the chip deactivation spell before he can give Order 66 out of spite, and we have the entire Senate as witnesses to his confession. It's risky, Bruce pointed out. If any component fails, then we improvise, Tony said. That's what we do. The plan goes wrong, we adapt, we overcome, and we save the day despite impossible odds. It's kind of our thing. Thor hefted Stormbreaker, returned to him through mystic connection, after the entity's attempt to consume it failed. And if Palpatine proves to be more powerful than anticipated, if he attacks the Senate, then he faces the Avengers, the Jedi Council, and 2 wizards who've taken down Dark Lords before, Steve replied. I'll take those odds. Agreed, Mace said, but remember, our primary goal is exposing him, not killing him. We need the Senate to see what he truly is. A dead Sith Lord becomes a martyr, an exposed one becomes a cautionary tale. 1 hour later, the Galactic Senate chamber was filling with representatives from across the galaxy. Senators took their positions on floating platforms that surrounded the central podium where Palpatine would speak. The Jedi Council sat in their designated section, all 12 masters in ceremonial robes, projecting calm wisdom despite the tension crackling beneath the surface. Scattered throughout the chamber, invisible to force sensing but very much present, were the Avengers. Natasha had infiltrated the Chancellor's preparation room, disguised as a Senate aide. Clint perched in the highest rafters with his bow ready. Tony's armor was in stealth mode, providing real-time tactical analysis. Steve, Bruce, and T'Challa positioned themselves at strategic entry points, ready to respond to any threat. In the Jedi Temple, Merlin stood in a meditation chamber surrounded by arcane symbols drawn in light. Wanda's chaos magic and technological interfaces connected to Tony's arc reactor network. Vision floated above them, his mind stone blazing as he prepared to amplify the spell cross-planetary distances. This is insane, Peter Parker said, watching through remote cameras from his position, monitoring the Forgotten Realm entity. We're basically trying to mind hack an entire army using magic, alien technology and willpower. If this works, it'll be the coolest thing I've ever seen. If it fails, we're all going to die horribly." "Thanks for that, kid," Tony's voice came through the comms, really settling everyone's nerves. In the Senate chamber, Chancellor Palpatine emerged. To thunderous applause, he looked every inch the kindly statesman. Humble smile, modest gestures, eyes that seemed to radiate grandfatherly warmth. But those with Force sensitivity felt the darkness beneath that mask, now that they knew to look for it. "Senators, Jedi Masters, citizens of the Republic," Palpatine began, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. "I stand before you today to discuss our great Republic's future. For too long we have been mired in war. For too long we have sacrificed peace in the name of security. But I am here to tell you that sacrifice is about to bear fruit." Natasha, dressed as an aide, approached with a tray containing the Chancellor's customary glass of water. Her movements were perfectly natural, unremarkable, the kind of service that happened 100 times during Senate sessions. She set the glass on Palpatine's podium, and in the microsecond before he turned toward it, 3 drops of veritaserum hit the water's surface and dissolved without trace. "The Separatist leadership has been fractured by recent losses," Palpatine continued, taking a sip of water without thought. "Count Dooku is captured. General Grievous has abandoned his post. The droid armies lack coordination. Victory, my friends, is within our grasp." He paused, and his expression flickered, just for a moment. The veritaserum was taking effect, compelling honesty in ways even the dark side couldn't fully resist. When he spoke again, his voice carried an edge it hadn't before. "But victory brings choices. The question before us is not whether we win, but what we do with that victory. Do we return to the old Republic, the inefficient, corrupt, bureaucratic nightmare that allowed this war to begin? Or do we embrace something new, something stronger?" Mace Windu stood in the Jedi section. "Chancellor, are you suggesting changes to the Republic's structure? The Senate would need to vote on any constitutional amendments." "The Senate," Palpatine said, and the truth serum made him continue beyond what he'd planned. "The Senate is a collection of self-interested politicians more concerned with their own power than the galaxy's welfare. I've manipulated them for years. Every vote, every debate, every democratic decision, I've orchestrated all of it." The chamber fell silent. Senators looked at each other in shock. Palpatine's own face showed surprise at what he'd just said, realizing something was wrong even as the words continued pouring out. "What are you saying?" Bail Organa demanded from his platform. "You're admitting to manipulating the Senate." "I'm admitting to controlling it," Palpatine replied, fighting the compulsion but unable to stop. "For 13 years, I've pulled every string, bribed every necessary official, eliminated every obstacle to my vision. The Clone Wars, I created them. The Separatist movement, I invented it through my apprentice, Count Dooku. The Clone Army, I commissioned it under a dead Jedi's. Name all of it, every battle, every death, every moment of this war, I designed it to destroy the Jedi and transform the Republic into an empire with me as eternal emperor." "Lies," someone shouted. "He's being coerced, mind control." "Not lies," Obi-Wan called out, broadcasting the evidence they'd gathered on holographic displays throughout the chamber. Financial records, communication logs, biometric authorization codes. The Chancellor personally authorized the construction of a Jedi killing facility beneath the temple. He programmed inhibitor chips into clone troopers to force them to execute their Jedi commanders. Every accusation he's making against himself is supported by irrefutable evidence. Palpatine's expression transformed from shock to cold fury. The truth serum was still compelling honesty, so he couldn't deny it. Instead, he changed tactics entirely. "Yes," he hissed, and his voice dropped to the rasping tone of Darth Sidious. "Yes, I am responsible for all of it. I am Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith. I have orchestrated the greatest conspiracy in galactic history, and you fools never saw it. Even now, even with your evidence and your truth serums and your dimensional refugees, you're too late." His hands moved faster than thought, and Sith lightning erupted from his fingertips, not toward the Jedi, but toward a small device on his podium. The device activated with an electronic chirp that echoed through the Force, the Order 66 signal. "Merlin, now!" Mace Windu shouted, igniting his lightsaber even as chaos erupted in the Senate chamber. In the Jedi Temple, Merlin's eyes blazed pure gold as he unleashed the spell they'd been preparing. His magic, amplified by Wanda's chaos energy, channeled through Vision's Mind Stone, and powered by Tony's arc reactor, exploded outward in a wave of golden light that swept across Coruscant at the speed of thought. Every clone trooper on the planet froze mid-action as the spell hit their inhibitor chips. For 3 eternal seconds, millions of soldiers stood motionless, while magic rewrote organic circuits, burned out artificial programming, and freed minds that had been enslaved since birth. Then, as one, they collapsed. "Rex!" Anakin shouted through the comms. "Rex, report! What's happening?" Captain Rex's voice came back shaky but conscious. "Sir, there was a pressure in my head, a command. Execute Order 66, but it's gone. We can think again. General, what did you do?" "We saved your lives," Anakin replied. "Now save ours. Palpatine is Darth Sidious. He just tried to kill every Jedi in the galaxy. We need backup, now." In the Senate chamber, Palpatine's Sith lightning had already killed 3 senators who'd been too close. The Jedi Council activated their lightsabers, surrounding him. But the Sith Lord was laughing. "You think you've won? The chips are deactivated. Impressive. But I have contingencies beyond Order 66. The facility beneath your temple is about to explode. The bioweapons are releasing. The droid armies are activating. You've saved the clones, but you've doomed yourselves." "Friday status," Tony demanded. "Sir, he's activated failsafe protocols. Multiple systems coming online across the facility. Estimated time to catastrophic failure, 90 seconds. "Merlin, can you teleport the bioweapons off-planet?" Harry asked urgently. "Not all of them. There are too many dispersed locations. I can maybe get half." "Then we contain the damage," Steve decided. "Tony, can your arc reactor overload absorb the energy from the facility's explosion?" "It would kill me, Cap." "Can it?" "Yes, but..." "No buts. Do it. We need..." "Wait," Bruce interrupted, and his voice was deepening as the Hulk persona took control. "Not Tony, me. Hulk can survive arc reactor explosion. Tony can't. Hulk fix this. Hulk smash bad man's plan." Before anyone could protest, the Hulk leaped from the Senate chamber, straight down through multiple levels of Coruscant infrastructure, punching through metal and stone like they were paper, heading directly for the facility beneath the temple. "Bruce!" Steve shouted, but it was too late. In the Senate chamber, Palpatine was still laughing, his form surrounded by dark side energy. "One of you dies stopping my contingencies. The rest of you die fighting me. And even if you somehow win, the entity in the Forgotten Realm is already breaking free. I've been feeding it for years. Your dimensional refugees taught it about universe-spanning existence. It knows how to escape now. And when it does, it will consume everything." "Then we stop it and you," Thor declared, lightning crackling around his form. "I am Thor Odinson. I have fought frost giants, dark elves, and the Mad Titan himself. What is one more dark sorcerer to the god of thunder? He hurled Stormbreaker with all his godly might. The enchanted axe, forged to kill Thanos, flew directly at Darth Sidious. This time, the Sith Lord didn't try to absorb it. He deflected it with the Force, but the impact shattered his podium and sent him sprawling. The Jedi Council closed in, lightsabers blazing. "You are under arrest, Darth Sidious," Mace Windu declared, "for treason, genocide, and crimes against every living being in this galaxy." Sidious rose, his eyes burning yellow with dark side corruption. "I am the Senate, not anymore," Natasha said, appearing behind him with widow's bites charged. "You're just a war criminal who's about to face justice." The battle for the fate of the galaxy had finally begun, and every Avenger, every Jedi, and both wizards were about to discover whether dimensional refugees and Force users working together could stop the greatest Sith Lord in generations and prevent an ancient evil from consuming all of reality. The battle erupted across multiple fronts simultaneously. In the Senate chamber, Darth Sidious unleashed decades of accumulated dark side power with the fury of a Sith Lord who'd been forced to hide for too long. His lightsaber, a crimson blade that seemed to drink light, appeared in his hand as if summoned from nowhere, and when he moved, it was with speed that made even Jedi Masters struggle to track him. "You think numbers give you advantage," Sidious snarled, his blade deflecting Mace Windu's strike while simultaneously unleashing Force lightning at Kit Fisto. "I am the culmination of 1,000 years of Sith knowledge. I have studied every Jedi weakness, planned for every contingency, and waited decades for this moment." His lightsaber technique was Juyo, the seventh form, the most aggressive and unpredictable style. Each strike came from impossible angles, each movement flowed seamlessly into the next, and his connection to the dark side made him faster, stronger, and more vicious than any Jedi could match, while maintaining their connection to the light. But he wasn't fighting just Jedi. "Yeah, about that whole planned for every contingency thing." Tony Stark's voice came from above as repulsor beams hammered into Sidious from 3 different angles. "Did you plan for Iron Man?" The beams struck Sidious's Force barrier and dispersed, but they forced him to divide his attention. In that microsecond of distraction, Mace Windu's Vapad form, specifically designed to channel an opponent's darkness back at them, struck home. His purple blade carved through Sidious's robes, leaving a smoking wound across the Sith Lord's shoulder. Sidious screamed, not in pain but in rage, and unleashed a Force storm that sent everyone within 10 meters flying. Senators fled their platforms in panic. Clone troopers, now freed from their programming, poured into the chamber to secure civilians and establish defensive positions. "Contain him!" Obi-Wan commanded, his strategic mind recognizing the tactical situation. "Don't let him reach the exits. If he escapes into Coruscant's infrastructure, he won't," Captain America said, his shield ricocheting off 3 walls before striking Sidious in the back. The impact staggered the Sith Lord, and Steve caught his returning shield without breaking stride. "We've fought gods before. You're just a man with power, and men can be stopped." "A man?" Sidious turned his yellow eyes on Steve, and the sheer malevolence in that gaze was palpable. "I am beyond human. I have transcended mortality through the dark side. I have killed Jedi Masters, toppled governments, and orchestrated the deaths of billions. What are you but a soldier who should have died 70 years ago?" "I'm someone who doesn't give up," Steve replied, raising his shield. "Ever." Sidious's response was to hurl Senate platforms at him, entire floating sections filled with screaming senators, forcing Steve to choose between defending himself and saving civilians. Steve chose civilians, using his shield to deflect debris while senators scrambled to safety. Predictable, Sidious sneered. Heroes always choose to save. That weakness is why you always... He never finished the sentence. Wanda Maximoff appeared through a portal of chaos magic, her eyes glowing red, her power making reality itself bend. You talk too much. Her chaos magic slammed into Sidious like a freight train made of raw possibility. The Sith Lord's force barriers shattered. His lightsaber was torn from his hand, and for the first time in decades, Darth Sidious felt genuine fear as Wanda's power began rewriting the reality around him. What are you?" he gasped, his dark side power struggling against magic that operated on fundamentally different principles than the Force. "I'm Wanda Maximoff," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. "And I've rewritten reality before. I can unmake you with a thought." "Wanda, wait!" Vision phased through the Senate chamber's wall, his mind stone blazing. If you erase him, his contingencies might activate automatically. We need him alive to deactivate. An explosion rocked the entire planet, not from the Senate chamber, but from deep beneath the Jedi Temple, the facility that Sidious had built, the one containing bioweapons, droid armies, and enough destructive potential to level half of Coruscant, had just detonated, or rather, should have detonated. Instead, the explosion was contained, compressed into a sphere of impossible density by green gamma radiation and raw Hulk fury. Bruce Banner, transformed into the Hulk, stood at the facility's core, holding together forces that should have vaporized a city. His muscles strained, his roar echoed through dimensions, and the gamma energy radiating from his body was actually absorbing the explosion, converting destructive force into raw power that fed back into his strength. "Hulk, hold! Explosion!" The green giant bellowed, his consciousness split between Bruce's scientific mind, calculating structural integrity, and the Hulk's primal determination to protect his friends. "Hulk, strongest there is!" On the surface, Merlin felt the magical wards he'd placed around the facility activating in response to Hulk's efforts. "He's containing it, but he can't hold it forever. We need to evacuate the area." "No time," Ahsoka said, using the Force to sense the facility's status. "If he releases that energy, the explosion will be 10 times worse than the original design. The Hulk has compressed so much destructive potential into such a small space that letting go now would crack Coruscant's planetary crust." "Then we help him," Harry said, his wand blazing with protective magic. "Protego Maxima, Fianto Duri, Repello Inimicum." The strongest shield charms he knew, layered over Merlin's wards and the Hulk's physical containment, creating a triple barrier of magic, gamma radiation, and sheer willpower. In the Forgotten Realm, the entity felt the dimensional barriers weakening, as reality itself was strained by 3 different crises occurring simultaneously. The Sith Lord's exposure, the explosion containment, and Wanda's reality manipulation were all creating ripples in the fabric of existence. Ripples it could exploit. "It's moving!" Peter Parker shouted, his spider sense screaming warnings. "The entity, it's trying to break through while everyone's distracted." Thor raised Stormbreaker, channeling the full power of the God of Thunder. Lightning cascaded from cloudless skies, striking the containment field with enough force to vaporize a mountain. But the entity absorbed it, feeding on the energy, growing stronger. Physical attacks strengthen it, T'Challa realized, his Wakandan intellect recognizing a pattern. It consumes energy, lightning, magic, even the Force. Everything we throw at it just makes it more powerful. "Then we don't throw power at it," Plo Koon said, an idea forming. Master Windu taught that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when not to act. What if we simply stop feeding it? Stop fighting? Peter asked incredulously. Stop giving it what it wants, Plo corrected. The entity feeds on barriers, on conflict, on the space between opposing forces. What if there were no opposition? What if we simply unified our defense into passive resistance rather than active combat? It was a radical idea, going against every combat instinct. But sometimes the most radical ideas were the right ones. Back in the Senate chamber, Sidious had recovered from Wanda's attack and was now fighting with desperate fury. His force powers lashed out in all directions. Lightning, telekinesis, force scream attacks that shattered glass and ruptured eardrums. The Jedi Council fought defensively, protecting senators and civilians while trying to contain the Sith Lord. "He's too powerful," Obi-Wan called out as Sidious's lightning forced him back. "Even together, we can barely hold him." "Then we change tactics," Natasha said, her strategic mind finding the weak point. "He's powerful, yes, but he's also arrogant. He thinks in terms of force versus force, Jedi versus Sith. He's not prepared for someone who doesn't play by those rules." She caught Clint's eye and made a hand signal that only S.H.I.E.L.D. agents would recognize. Clint nodded, understanding immediately. His next arrow wasn't aimed at Sidious. It was aimed at the Senate chamber's central power conduit. The arrow struck true, and the chamber went dark. Emergency lighting activated, but for 3 critical seconds, the sudden darkness and chaos disrupted Sidious's force senses. In those 3 seconds, Natasha moved. She was the Black Widow, master spy, expert assassin, survivor of the Red Room's brutal training. She didn't need the Force. She had skill, experience, and the willingness to do whatever it took to complete the mission. Her Widow's bites hit Sidious from behind. Electric charges specifically calibrated to disrupt neural activity. The Sith Lord's force powers flickered. His lightsaber fell from nerveless fingers, and in that moment of vulnerability, Mace Windu's blade came down in a strike that would have ended Darth Sidious permanently. "No!" Anakin's voice rang out, and his lightsaber intercepted Mace's strike. "We need him alive. If he dies, we don't know what contingencies activate automatically." "Anakin, he's too dangerous to take alive," Mace argued. "Then we make sure he can't use the Force," Merlin said, appearing through magical teleportation with a collar made of strange metal. Beskar, gifted by the Mandalorians, inscribed with runes that suppress Force connection. Put this on him and he's just an old man in robes. The collar snapped around Sidious's neck, and immediately the dark side presence that had dominated the chamber for decades vanished. Darth Sidious, the most powerful Sith Lord in 1,000 years, collapsed to his knees, cut off from the source of his power for the first time since childhood. "It's gone," he whispered, his voice no longer carrying dark side resonance. "The Force, I can't feel it." "Good," Mace said coldly. "Now you'll stand trial as a man, not a Sith Lord, and you'll face justice for every crime you've committed." Clone troopers moved in to secure Sidious, placing him in energy binders that locked his arms behind his back. The once Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic was now a prisoner, his conspiracy exposed, his power stripped away, his grand vision of empire reduced to ash. But the battle wasn't over. "Status check," Steve commanded through the comms. "Hulk, can you hold that explosion?" "Hulk, getting tired," came the strained reply. "Energy, too much, need help." "Vision, can you phase the containment field?" Tony asked urgently. "Negative. The explosion is in our dimension. I can phase through it, but I cannot move it dimensionally." "Then we need a different solution." Bruce Banner's voice came through, still present within the Hulk's consciousness. The explosion is contained but unstable. It needs to be released in a controlled manner. Friday, calculate trajectory for orbital release. Sir, if you release that energy in orbit, the electromagnetic pulse will knock out every satellite around Coruscant. Global communications will be dead for weeks. Better than a city-destroying explosion, Bruce replied. Hulk, can you jump to orbit while holding the containment? Hulk can jump anywhere, the green giant roared, and with a leap that cracked the ground beneath him, he shot skyward carrying a sphere of compressed destruction that glowed with gamma radiation. 10 seconds later, high above Coruscant's atmosphere, the Hulk released the containment. The explosion was magnificent, a second sun blooming in orbit, visible from the surface as a blinding flash that lasted 3 heartbeats before fading. The electromagnetic pulse swept across orbital space, disabling satellites and causing temporary blackouts. But the surface was spared. The Hulk fell back to Coruscant in a meteor of green fury, his re-entry creating a sonic boom that rattled windows across the Capital District. He landed in the Senate District with an impact that created a small crater, transformed back into Bruce Banner, and promptly passed out from exhaustion. Someone get him medical attention, Steve ordered, already moving toward Banner's position. But even as that crisis was resolved, the worst threat remained. In the Forgotten Realm, the entity had been studying their tactics, learning their patterns, and now it made its move. The containment field that Merlin and Wanda had repaired shattered like glass, and the ancient evil that had been imprisoned for millennia finally broke free. All teams, we have a Priority 1 emergency. Plo Koon's voice crackled across every comm channel. The entity has escaped containment. It's heading directly toward Coruscant. Estimated arrival time, 15 minutes. 15 minutes until a force-eating cosmic horror reaches a planet with trillions of people, Tony summarized. Anyone have any ideas? Just one, Wanda said, her chaos magic already building to levels that made reality itself vibrate. But you're not going to like it. Why not? Because if I'm wrong, I'll accidentally erase our entire dimension from existence. But if I'm right, I can trap the entity in a reality where barriers don't exist, where there's nothing for it to feed on because everything is unified into a single, undifferentiated whole. You're right, Steve said. I don't like it, but do we have better options? Silence answered him. Then we go with Wanda's plan, Steve decided. Everyone except Wanda evacuate to the farthest edges of the planet. If this goes wrong, at least we'll buy civilians time to escape. I'm staying, Vision said firmly. Wanda will need the Mind Stone's power to pull this off. So am I, Merlin added. 3 reality manipulators are better than 1. And me, Harry said, Master of Death stepping forward. The Deathly Hallows give me authority over the boundary between life and death. If this thing feeds on barriers, maybe I can offer it the one barrier even it can't cross. The entity arrived like a storm of nothing, a hole in reality that sucked in light, sound, and hope itself. It had grown during its imprisonment, feeding on the dimensional energies the Avengers had brought, learning about universes beyond this one. Now it was large enough to swallow a city, and it was hungry. Finally, it said, with a voice that came from everywhere and nowhere, finally I am free, and now I will consume not just this galaxy, but every reality that exists, starting with yours, dimensional refugees. I should thank you for teaching me about the multiverse. Your arrival was the key to my escape. Then let us give you a proper thank you gift, Wanda said, her eyes glowing pure crimson as chaos magic erupted from her hands. Vision, Merlin, Harry, now! 4 powers that should never have worked together, combined into something unprecedented. Wanda's chaos magic to rewrite reality, Vision's mind stone to give that rewrite consciousness and direction, Merlin's prophetic magic to ensure the rewrite created a stable future, and Harry's authority over death to seal the barrier between existence and non-existence. Together they created something impossible, a pocket dimension where all barriers were removed, where light and dark were one, where life and death merged, where every opposing force existed in perfect unity, a reality with nothing for the entity to feed on because there was no division to consume. And then they pushed that pocket dimension around the entity like a cage. The ancient evil screamed, not in pain but in confusion, as it found itself in a reality that made no sense. It tried to feed on barriers that didn't exist, tried to consume division that had been unified, tried to escape to other dimensions but found the boundaries sealed by death itself. "No!" it roared. "You cannot contain entropy. I am the ending of all things. I am trapped," Wanda finished, her voice carrying exhaustion but also triumph. "Forever." The pocket dimension collapsed inward, taking the entity with it, creating a singularity of unified existence that couldn't interact with normal reality. The threat was ended. The entity was imprisoned in a way that made its previous containment look like a suggestion, but the cost was evident. Wanda collapsed. Vision caught her before she hit the ground, his own systems flickering from the strain. Merlin's eyes had returned to normal, all the prophetic gold drained from them, and he swayed with exhaustion. Harry stood with the resurrection stone, cloak, and elder wand all glowing, having used all three hallows simultaneously to seal death's authority into the prison. "Is it done?" Mace Windu asked as Jedi and Avengers gathered around the exhausted heroes. "It's done," Wanda confirmed weakly. "The entity is contained in a reality where it can never escape. We've saved the galaxy." "You've saved multiple galaxies," Steve corrected, pride evident in his voice. "Multiple realities. That thing was learning to cross dimensions. If it had escaped fully, our universe would have been next on its menu." "Then the Force was right to summon us," Thor said, looking at the pocket dimension's sealed boundary that hung in space like a scar on reality. "We were needed here, and we have done what we came to do." But even as they celebrated victory, one question remained. Darth Sidious was captured, the entity was contained, but what came next? The aftermath of the greatest conspiracy in galactic history unfolded across every Holonet broadcast, every news feed, and every conversation in the Republic. Darth Sidious, Supreme Chancellor Sheev Palpatine, sat in a Force suppression cell beneath the Jedi Temple, awaiting trial for crimes that ranged from treason to genocide. The Beskar collar around his neck kept him severed from the Force, reducing him to what he'd always truly been, a bitter old man whose ambitions had finally exceeded his grasp. 3 days after his capture, the Galactic Senate convened for an emergency session to address the constitutional crisis. With Palpatine removed, the Republic needed new leadership, new direction, and most critically, new safeguards to ensure no one could ever again accumulate the power he had wielded. Bail Organa stood before the assembled senators, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd witnessed the Republic's near destruction firsthand. "My fellow senators, we face a choice that will define our civilization for generations. Do we pretend the rot was limited to one man? Or do we acknowledge that our entire system enabled his rise?" Padme Amidala joined him at the podium. "The evidence is clear. Chancellor Palpatine manipulated us through fear, through crisis, through the erosion of our democratic principles in the name of security. But he couldn't have done it alone. Corporate interests funded his rise. Banking clans profited from the war, and we, Her voice broke slightly. We granted him emergency powers without proper oversight. We are all complicit. The chamber was silent. Senator Orn Free Ta, who'd voted for emergency powers multiple times, stood reluctantly. If we're all complicit, then what do? Dissolve the entire government? Arrest ourselves? We reform, a new voice said. Tony Stark walked into the Senate chamber despite not being a senator, his presence commanding attention through sheer force of personality. On my Earth, after we discovered Hydra had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., we didn't just arrest the bad guys. We dismantled the entire organization and rebuilt it from scratch with transparency and accountability. You need to do the same. With respect, Mr. Stark, another senator protested, you're a dimensional refugee with no legal standing in our government. What authority do you have to tell the Senate how to operate? The authority of someone who helped save your republic from a Sith Lord and prevented a cosmic horror from eating reality, Tony replied. But if you want legal standing, I'll give you results instead. Friday, display the reform proposal. Holographic documents appeared throughout the chamber, a comprehensive restructuring of Republic governance that the Avengers, Jedi Council, and reform-minded senators had been developing for the past 3 days. Steve Rogers stepped forward to explain. Here's what we're proposing. First, abolish all emergency powers. No exceptions. If there's a crisis, the Senate votes on specific temporary measures with sunset clauses and oversight. Second, corporate campaign funding is banned completely. No more lobbying, no more conflicts of interest. Third, the Jedi Order separates from Republic military command. You become advisors and peacekeepers again, not generals. Mace Windu nodded from the Jedi section. We agree. The Order lost its way during the war. We became too focused on military victory and forgot our true purpose. We will never again serve as generals in a Republic army. Fourth, Natasha continued, establish an independent oversight commission with representatives from multiple sectors and species, including former separatist worlds. No more core world-dominated politics that ignore the Outer Rim's needs. Fifth, clone troopers are granted full citizenship and freedom to choose their own paths. No being should be created as property. That last point generated immediate debate. Captain Rex stood beside the Avengers, the first clone to address the Senate officially. My brothers and I were bred for war. We had no choice in our creation, our training, or our deployment. But now we've been freed from the inhibitor chips that would have forced us to murder our Jedi commanders. We're asking, no, we're demanding recognition as sentient beings with rights. We fought for the Republic, now we want to be part of it. The vote on clone citizenship passed overwhelmingly. The other reforms would take longer to implement, but the will for change was evident. The Republic that emerged from Palpatine's attempted coup would be fundamentally different from the one he'd manipulated. But while the Senate debated governance, another reckoning was taking place in the Jedi Council chambers. The Order had to confront uncomfortable truths about how they'd been manipulated, how they'd failed to see the darkness literally beneath their temple, and how their rigid dogma had made them blind to Sidious's presence. We were arrogant, Obi-Wan admitted to the assembled masters. We believed our connection to the Force made us wise. But wisdom isn't about power, it's about humility, questioning and admitting when you're wrong. The Avengers, wizards from another dimension, with no connection to the Force, saw what we couldn't. That should teach us something. Yoda nodded slowly, his centuries-long wisdom finally acknowledging failure. Forgotten we had what it means to be peacekeepers. Became warriors, we did. Lost our way, the Order has. But learn we can. Change we must. Ahsoka Tano spoke up. her voice carrying both respect and challenge. "With permission, Masters, I'd like to propose something radical. What if we opened the Order to other forms of power? The Avengers showed us that force sensitivity isn't the only path to wisdom or strength. Wanda's chaos magic, Merlin's wizardry, even Tony's technology, they all offer different perspectives. Maybe the Jedi should learn from them rather than dismissing anything that isn't the Force." "That would be unprecedented," Ki-Adi-Mundi protested. "The Jedi have always been about the Force. It's fundamental to who we are." "And that rigidity almost got us all killed," Anakin said bluntly. "If we'd been more open to other viewpoints, maybe we would have seen Palpatine's manipulation sooner. Maybe we wouldn't have become generals. Maybe we'd still remember what it means to be Jedi." The debate would continue for years, but the seed of change had been planted. The Jedi Order would never be the same. In the prison cells beneath the temple, Darth Sidious received a visitor. Harry Potter stood outside the Force suppression field, his wand ready but unthreatening, studying the man who'd nearly destroyed a galaxy. "Come to gloat?" Sidious asked, his voice lacking the dark side resonance that had once made senators tremble. "To tell me how justice has prevailed and good has triumphed?" "No," Harry said quietly. "I came to understand. I fought a dark wizard named Voldemort who wanted to conquer death and rule through fear. I've faced Grindelwald's legacy, and now I've helped stop you. I keep wondering if there's a pattern, if dark wizards and Sith Lords are fundamentally the same, or if there's something specific about power that corrupts. You want to know if I'm evil?" Sidious laughed bitterly. "I'm practical. The Republic was collapsing under its own bureaucratic weight. I would have created order, efficiency, strength. Yes, I would have eliminated the Jedi, but they were dinosaurs clinging to outdated philosophies. My empire would have been absolute, but it would have been stable." "At the cost of freedom," Harry countered. "You would have created a galaxy where trillions lived in fear, where dissent meant death, where power was concentrated in one immortal tyrant who could never be questioned or replaced. That's not order, that's tyranny. Tyranny, democracy, they're just words. What matters is results." Sidious leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. "Tell me, Potter, in your battle against Voldemort, did you always follow the rules? Did you never use questionable methods? Never bend laws to achieve your goals?" Harry was silent for a moment. "I used unforgivable curses. I stole. I broke into the Ministry of Magic. But there's a difference between breaking rules to stop evil and breaking rules to become evil. You crossed that line so long ago, you can't even see it anymore. Then why are you here? If I'm beyond redemption, beyond understanding, why talk to me?" "Because," Harry said, "I need to know if you feel anything. Remorse, regret, anything that suggests you're still human beneath the monster you became." Sidious met his eyes, and for just a moment, Harry saw something, a flicker of what might have been regret, or perhaps just recognition of how thoroughly he'd failed. "I feel cheated. I was within days of total victory, immortality, universal conquest, and I was stopped by dimensional refugees who shouldn't have even existed in my galaxy if the Force hadn't summoned you." "But it did," Harry interrupted, "which means even the universe itself was against you. Maybe that should tell you something about whether your vision was righteous." He turned to leave, then paused. "You'll stand trial, you'll be convicted, and you'll spend whatever life you have left in a cell, cut off from the Force you spent decades mastering. That's justice, not revenge, not cruelty, just appropriate consequences for your actions." "And you think that's enough?" Sidious called after him. "You think imprisoning me solves the problems that let me rise? The corruption, the inequality, the corporate control of government. It's all still there. I exploited those weaknesses, but I didn't create them. Another Sith will come. Another manipulator will find those same cracks in your republic and exploit them. You've stopped me, Potter, but you haven't fixed anything. Harry stopped at the doorway. You're right, we haven't fixed everything, but we've started, and that's more than you ever did. You saw problems and chose to make them worse for your own benefit. We see problems and we're choosing to fix them, even though it's harder and slower and less satisfying than just imposing our will. That's what makes us different from you. He left Sidious in his cell, the former Sith Lord's words echoing in his mind, because as much as he hated to admit it, Sidious had a point. Stopping one tyrant didn't prevent the next one. Real change required systemic reform, cultural shift, and eternal vigilance. That evening, the Avengers gathered on a temple balcony overlooking Coruscant's sunset. They'd been in the Star Wars galaxy for exactly 1 week, and in that time they'd helped stop a genocide, expose a Sith Lord, prevent an ancient evil from consuming reality, and sparked the greatest governmental reform in Republic history. Not a bad week's work, Tony said, sipping something that passed for alcohol in this universe. Though I've got to say, I'm ready to go home. Friday's calculated we've disrupted approximately 17,000 news cycles, caused 4 constitutional crises, and somehow become the most famous beings in galactic history. That's exhausting even by my standards. Can we go home? Peter asked hopefully. I mean, the Force brought us here. Can it send us back? Vision's Mind Stone pulsed as he consulted cosmic patterns. The dimensional rift that brought us is closed. However, Wanda's chaos magic combined with my understanding of the Mind Stone suggests we could recreate a similar breach. It would be dangerous, potentially unstable, but theoretically possible. Theoretically possible is better than permanently stranded, Bruce said, though he looked thoughtful. But should we go? The Republic is still fragile. These reforms need support, and there are clone troopers who need help integrating into civilian society, Jedi who need guidance rebuilding their order, and a whole galaxy that's trying to figure out what comes next. That's not our galaxy to fix, Steve said, though his tone suggested he was wrestling with the decision. We're Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes. Our world needs us too. We've been gone a week. Who knows what's happened back home? But we made promises here, Natasha pointed out, to the clones, to the reform movement, to the people who trusted us. Do we just leave them to figure it out alone? Thor gazed at the alien stars with the wisdom of someone who'd lived long enough to see civilizations rise and fall. In my 9 centuries, I have learned that heroes must choose. We cannot save every world, fight every battle, or right every wrong. We must trust that the people we've helped will carry forward the work we started. The Republic, the Jedi, the people of this galaxy, they are not children who need our constant protection. They are capable beings who simply needed someone to show them a different path. Thor's right, T'Challa agreed. Wakanda learned long ago that true helping means empowerment, not dependence. We've given this galaxy tools, knowledge, and examples. What they do with those gifts is their choice to make. Wanda looked at Vision, her chaos magic sense feeling the pull of home across dimensional barriers. I want to go back. Earth needs the Scarlet Witch, but I'll miss this place. It's beautiful in its own way, even with all its problems. Then we make our choice, Steve decided. We've done what the Force summoned us for. Stopped the entity, exposed Sidious, prevented Order 66. Our mission here is complete. It's time to go home. Not yet. Merlin's voice came from behind them. The young warlock stood with Harry Potter, both looking exhausted but satisfied. There's one more thing the Force needs from us. One final task before you can leave. What task? Clint asked warily. Teaching, Harry said simply. The Republic, the Jedi, they need to understand that power comes in many forms, that the Force isn't the only path to wisdom. Before you go, share your knowledge. Teach them what you know about teamwork, about ethics in power usage, about how to build systems that prevent tyrants from rising. You want us to become teachers? Tony asked incredulously. Just for a few days, Merlin said. The Jedi want to learn about technology from you, Tony. The clone troopers need Cap's leadership lessons. The Senate needs Natasha's insights on intelligence and security. Each of you has wisdom this galaxy needs. And what will you two do? Steve asked. We're staying, Harry said, surprising everyone. Temporarily, at least. Merlin and I have been talking. The magical traditions in this galaxy are primitive, all Force-based, nothing like Earth's spell-casting traditions. We could help establish something new, a Hogwarts for the stars, maybe, and someone needs to make sure Sidious's trial is conducted properly, that all his contingencies are truly dismantled. Plus, Merlin added with a grin that made him look far younger than his centuries, I've been searching for Camelot's ideals my whole life. The Republic is trying to build something similar, a just society based on law and mutual respect. I want to help make that real. Arthur would have wanted me to. The Avengers looked at each other, the decision forming without words. They would stay a few more days, teach what they could, help establish the foundations of the reforms they'd sparked. And then, when they were satisfied they'd done everything possible, they would go home. In the Senate chamber, Bail Organa drafted legislation that would reshape the Republic. In the Jedi Temple, masters meditated on new philosophies that incorporated lessons from dimensional refugees. In the clone barracks, Captain Rex taught leadership to brothers who were learning to choose their own paths. And across the galaxy, people who'd lived under Palpatine's manipulations for years began to hope for something better. The Republic had been saved. The Jedi had been humbled and reformed. The clones had been freed. And all of it because the Force, in its desperate wisdom, had reached across dimensional barriers and pulled champions from another universe entirely. Earth's mightiest heroes had arrived in a galaxy far, far away, and they had changed it forever. 5 days later, the Jedi Temple's training grounds had been transformed into something unprecedented in the Order's 1,000-year history, a mixed learning center where Force users, dimensional refugees, clones, and even civilians gathered to share knowledge that transcended traditional boundaries. Tony Stark stood before a group of 50 Jedi engineers, clone mechanics, and Republic scientists, surrounded by holographic displays showing arc reactor schematics. His presentation had been going for 2 hours, and his audience hung on every word. The fundamental problem with your hyperdrive technology is energy inefficiency, Tony explained, manipulating the hologram to show power flow diagrams. You're using hypermatter annihilation, which sure works, but wastes about 60% of potential energy. The arc reactor uses palladium. Well, in my newer models, I use a synthesized element, but that's beside the point. To create a self-sustaining reaction that outputs clean energy at 98% efficiency. A Jedi engineer raised her hand. Mr. Stark, with respect, we've used hypermatter for thousands of years. The infrastructure is established. Even if your arc reactor is superior, converting the entire galaxy would take centuries and cost more credits than exist. Which is why you don't convert everything, Tony replied. You start small, power individual ships, then stations, then cities. Let the technology prove itself. Within a generation, arc reactor derivatives become the standard, and hypermatter becomes the backup. That's how technological revolution works. Not overnight replacement, but gradual adoption. Anakin Skywalker, attending the lecture with obvious fascination, spoke up. Could we integrate arc reactor technology into starfighters? The power requirements for shields, weapons, and engines currently limit our tactical options. Absolutely, Tony said, his eyes lighting up with the joy of a fellow engineer recognizing a kindred spirit. In fact, I've been sketching designs. Your Z-95 headhunters are decent craft, but with arc reactor power plants, you could double shield strength, increase weapon output by 40%, and extend flight range by a factor of 3. Want to see the blueprints? Obviously, Anakin replied, moving closer to study the schematics. For the next hour, the two geniuses worked together, combining Tony's Earth technology with Anakin's intimate knowledge of galactic engineering standards, creating hybrid designs that would revolutionize starfighter combat. Across the temple, Captain America led a very different kind of class. 300 clone troopers sat in the Grand Assembly Hall, all recently freed from their inhibitor chips and struggling with newfound autonomy after a lifetime of programmed obedience. Steve Rogers stood before them without his shield, without his uniform, just a man who'd once been a soldier talking to other soldiers about what came after the fighting ended. I was created to be a weapon, Steve began, and the clones leaned forward, recognizing a kindred spirit. The super soldier serum turned me from a 90-pound asthmatic into what you see today. I was designed for war, trained for combat. My entire purpose was to fight America's enemies. Sound familiar? Captain Rex nodded from the front row. Very familiar, sir. But here's what I learned during the 70 years I was frozen in ice, Steve continued. Being created for a purpose doesn't mean you're limited to that purpose. When I woke up in the 21st century, World War II was long over. The enemies I'd fought were dead or ancient. I could have retired, claimed I'd done my duty. Instead, I chose to keep fighting because I realized my purpose wasn't being a weapon. It was standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. Easy to say when you had a choice, one clone said bitterly. We were bred for war. We don't know anything else. Then learn, Steve said simply. That's what I'm here to teach you. You've been given freedom, the most precious gift anyone can receive. Now you get to choose who you become. Some of you might stay soldiers, but soldiers who fight by choice, not programming. Others might become teachers, engineers, artists, parents. Whatever you choose, it's yours to decide. Fives, one of the clones who discovered the inhibitor chips years ago but died before he could expose the conspiracy, had been rescued during the facility's dismantling, kept in stasis by Sidious as a contingency test subject. Now revived and freed, he stood to address his brothers. Captain Rogers is right, Fives said. I spent years trying to warn people about the chips. I was called crazy, defective, a malfunction, but I knew something was wrong. Now we've all been freed from that programming, and we have a responsibility. Not to the Republic, not to the Jedi, to ourselves, to be the people we choose to be. How do we start? Another clone asked. We've only ever known military life. We don't have families, homes, or civilian skills. You start small, Steve advised. Take classes, learn trades, connect with civilians who can teach you about normal life. The Republic has offered education programs, housing assistance, and job training for any clone who wants it. And for those who want to stay soldiers, the new Republic Defense Force will be an all-volunteer army where you're paid, respected, and have the right to refuse orders you find unethical. That's so different from what we've known, Rex said quietly. Freedom is terrifying when you've never had it before. Freedom is always terrifying, Steve agreed, but it's worth it every single time. In another part of the temple, Natasha Romanoff conducted a far more classified briefing for the Senate Intelligence Committee. The senators and Jedi Masters in attendance had maximum security clearance, and what Natasha was teaching them about espionage, counterintelligence, and preventing future infiltrations would become the foundation of Republic security for generations. The reason Palpatine succeeded for so long, Natasha explained, displaying a complex web of connections, is because he understood something most people miss. The best spies are the ones nobody suspects. He wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was standing in the spotlight, being the helpful chancellor, the trusted mentor, the public servant. That's what made him invisible. "So how do we prevent the next Palpatine?" Bail Organa asked. "You can't," Natasha said bluntly. "What you can do is build systems that make infiltration harder and detection faster. First, compartmentalization. No single person should have access to all critical information. Second, mandatory oversight. Every major decision requires review by multiple independent bodies. Third, whistleblower protection. Make it safe for people to report suspicious activity without fear of retaliation. Fourth, regular security audits conducted by rotating teams who don't report to the subjects of their audits." "That sounds like it would slow down government considerably," a senator protested. "It will," Natasha agreed. "But speed is how Palpatine exploited you. Emergency powers, rapid responses, cutting through bureaucracy. He made you think efficiency was more important than accountability. Sometimes slow and careful is better than fast and compromised." Padme Amidala nodded thoughtfully. "We've been drafting legislation along these lines, but implementation will face resistance. Corporate interests, military commanders, even some senators will argue that oversight hampers effectiveness." "Then you make them understand," Clint Barton interjected, having joined the briefing, "that a little inefficiency is the price of freedom. SHIELD fell because it prioritized mission success over transparency. We had compartmentalization, but we didn't have independent oversight. Hydra exploited that gap for 70 years. Don't make our mistakes." Meanwhile, Bruce Banner conducted scientific symposiums with the galaxy's leading researchers, discussing everything from gamma radiation to artificial intelligence ethics. His dual perspective, as both a brilliant scientist and someone who'd struggled with power he couldn't fully control, made him uniquely qualified to address the ethical implications of advanced technology. "The question isn't whether we can create something," Bruce explained to an audience that included Kaminoan cloners and Republic geneticists. "The question is whether we should. You created a clone army, millions of living, thinking beings, without ever asking if those beings would want to exist for war. That's not science. That's playing God without wisdom." "But the Republic needed defenders," one Kaminoan argued. "The separatist threat was real. Without the clone army, you would have been forced to negotiate earlier," Bruce countered, "to find diplomatic solutions, to build alliances based on mutual benefit rather than military might. The clone army didn't save the Republic. It enabled Palpatine to prolong a war he'd created. Sometimes the tool you build becomes the trap that catches you." "So you're saying all scientific advancement is dangerous?" another scientist challenged. "I'm saying all powerful technology requires ethical frameworks," Bruce clarified. "I created the Hulk accidentally through gamma radiation exposure. That power has saved worlds and nearly destroyed them. The difference isn't the power itself. It's the choices made about how to use it. Before you create something that could change society, ask who benefits, who's harmed, and what safeguards exist if things go wrong." Wanda Maximoff's teachings were the most controversial. In a chamber specially prepared to contain chaos magic fluctuations, She taught a select group of Jedi about power that existed outside the Force, power that came from will, emotion, and the fundamental nature of reality itself. The Force connects all living things, Wanda explained, her hands glowing with red energy. But chaos magic comes from the gaps between things. It's about possibility, probability, and rewriting what is into what could be. The Force flows. Chaos magic changes the riverbed. Master Yoda observed with ancient eyes that had seen 8 centuries of Force phenomena. Dangerous this power seems. Reality itself you bend. Consequences there must be. There are always consequences, Wanda agreed. When I created the hex around Westview, I enslaved an entire town in my grief. When I studied the Darkhold, I nearly destroyed multiple realities looking for my children. Power without wisdom is just destruction wearing a different name. That's why I'm not teaching you how to use chaos magic. I'm teaching you to recognize when someone's using reality manipulation against you. She demonstrated by creating an illusion so perfect that even Force-sensitive Jedi couldn't detect it as false. Sith alchemy can do similar things. So can certain Force techniques. If you can't recognize reality manipulation, you can't defend against it. The next dark side user who masters these techniques could make Palpatine look subtle. Vision joined her, his Mind Stone providing analytical perspective. Additionally, the Republic should establish research into power sources beyond the Force. Our intervention proved effective precisely because Palpatine had no defense against abilities he didn't understand. Diversity of power creates resilience. Monoculture, whether in agriculture or ability, creates vulnerability. Thor's lessons were the most unorthodox. He took a group of Jedi to Coruscant's surface, to the industrial sectors where poverty and crime flourished despite the planet's wealth, and taught them something they'd forgotten: how to connect with ordinary people. You walk among the people wearing robes that mark you as different, Thor observed as they toured refugee camps, filled with beings displaced by the Clone Wars. You speak of the Force and destiny and cosmic balance, but these people don't care about cosmic balance. They care about feeding their children, finding work, and surviving tomorrow. We're not social workers, a Jedi Knight protested. We're peacekeepers. Our role is to maintain order, not solve economic problems. And how did that work out? Thor asked pointedly. Palpatine rose because people felt abandoned by institutions that claimed to protect them. The Jedi were so focused on galactic peace that you forgot about individual suffering. On Asgard, I once made that same mistake, believing that maintaining cosmic order was more important than helping one person in need. Then I lost my worthiness and had to relearn what it meant to be a hero. He knelt beside a refugee child, offering food from his own supplies. This child doesn't need speeches about the Force. She needs food, shelter, and hope. If the Jedi want to truly serve the galaxy, start here, with the forgotten, with the overlooked, with the people who fall through the cracks while you're busy maintaining balance. The Jedi Masters on the tour looked uncomfortable, forced to confront failures they'd rationalized for years, but they were listening, and that was a start. On the mission's final day, all the Avengers, both wizards, and the Jedi Council gathered in the temple's main chamber for a ceremony that would be broadcast across the galaxy. The Republic Senate had voted to award the Avengers honorary citizenship and the title of Defenders of the Republic, the first time such an honor had been extended to non-citizens. "We don't do this for the titles," Steve said, when accepting on behalf of his team. "We do this because it's right, because when the Force reached across dimensions and called for help, we answered. Because that's what heroes do. We show up when we're needed, even when it's not our world, not our fight, not our problem." Yoda approached, his small form carrying immense dignity. Saved the Republic you have. Saved the Jedi you have. But more importantly, taught us you have. Shown us our failings you have. With wisdom and compassion. Forever grateful the Jedi Order is. Welcome here, you always will be. We appreciate that, Master Yoda, Tony said, his usual sarcasm absent. But it's time for us to go home. Earth needs the Avengers too. Though I have to say, I'm leaving you with enough technology blueprints to keep your engineers busy for a decade. Use them wisely. And we'll remember what you taught us. Mace Windu promised. The Jedi will change. We must change, or we'll repeat the same mistakes. Your presence here was a gift, even if it came from desperate necessity. Anakin stepped forward, looking at Steve with respect that bordered on reverence. Captain, I thank you for showing me that leadership isn't about power or control. It's about service, about choosing to stand up even when you're afraid. You taught me more in 1 week than I've learned in years of Jedi training. You would have figured it out, Steve replied with a smile. You've got a good heart, Anakin. Trust it. And don't let anyone, not the Council, not politicians, not even the Force itself, make you into something you're not. Wanda created the dimensional portal with chaos magic, amplified by Vision's Mind Stone and stabilized by Merlin's prophetic magic, ensuring it led to the correct universe. The swirling vortex of possibility looked identical to the tunnel that had brought them here 1 week ago. Except now they chose to enter it rather than being pulled through involuntarily. Ready to go home? Steve asked his team. So ready, Peter said enthusiastically. No offense to the Star Wars galaxy, but I miss New York. I miss web slinging through skyscrapers. I miss pizza that doesn't come from a galaxy far, far away. I miss my lab, Bruce admitted, though I've learned a lot here. This galaxy's cloning technology is fascinating, even if the ethics are questionable. I'll miss the challenge, Natasha said. Infiltrating a galaxy-spanning conspiracy is the kind of operation I trained for. Earth seems so small by comparison now. Earth is small, Thor agreed, but it's our small world, and it needs its defenders. T'Challa took one last look at Coruscant's skyline. We've planted seeds here, ideas about reform, about justice, about power used responsibly. It will be interesting to see what grows from those seeds. Someone should check on them, Tony suggested. You know, in a few years, make sure the Republic doesn't backslide. Make sure the Jedi actually implement the reforms. Make sure our work here wasn't wasted. We'll check, Harry promised. He and Merlin were staying, at least for now, helping to establish the magical education system they'd proposed. And if things go wrong, if another Sidious rises or another ancient evil awakens, we'll find a way to call you. Dimensional barriers are less solid than they used to be, now that we know they can be crossed. Just don't make it a habit, Tony said. The Avengers are Earth's mightiest heroes. We've got to prioritize our own planet, even if we occasionally save others. Understandable, Merlin replied with a grin, but when the multiverse itself needs saving, don't be surprised if the Force summons you again. You've proven you're not just Earth's champions, you're reality's defenders. One by one, the Avengers stepped through the portal. Steve first, shield on his back, followed by Natasha and Clint, the inseparable pair. Tony flew through in his armor, giving a jaunty salute. Bruce hulked out for the journey, his massive green form squeezing through the dimensional gateway. T'Challa walked through with regal dignity. Peter web-slung through with characteristic enthusiasm. Vision and Wanda went together, his logic and her chaos perfectly balanced. And finally Thor, god of thunder, stepped through with Stormbreaker in hand, lightning crackling around his departure. The portal closed, sealing the dimensional barrier once again. The Avengers were gone, returned to their own universe, their own Earth, their own problems. But the changes they'd made remained. The Republic would reform. The Jedi would evolve. The clones would find freedom. And across the galaxy, billions of beings would remember the week when Earth's mightiest heroes arrived in a galaxy far, far away and reminded everyone what true heroism looked like. In his cell, Darth Sidious felt the dimensional barrier close and smiled bitterly. The Avengers had defeated him, reformed the Republic, and prevented his empire. But they had also proven something he'd always believed. Power was the only truth that mattered. They'd had power, dimensional spanning, reality warping power, and they'd used it to impose their vision on his galaxy. They claimed to be different from him, claimed to serve justice rather than ambition. But at the end of the day, they'd reshaped the Republic according to their beliefs, their ethics, their choices, just like he would have done. Perhaps, Sidious thought, heroes and villains weren't so different after all. They were just people with power, making choices about how to use it. The difference was just marketing. But in the Jedi Temple, Yoda meditated on the Avengers' departure and reached a different conclusion. Power itself was neutral, neither good nor evil. What mattered was the choice. Sidious chose to rule. The Avengers chose to serve. Sidious chose to impose. The Avengers chose to teach. Sidious chose tyranny. The Avengers chose freedom. In the end, that choice was everything. The Force swirled through the temple, and for just a moment Yoda sensed it. Gratitude. The Force itself was grateful that it had reached across dimensions, that it had found champions willing to answer the call, that Earth's mightiest heroes had come when needed most. And in that gratitude, Yoda found hope. Because if the Force could reach beyond reality itself to find heroes, then perhaps the galaxy was never truly beyond saving. There would always be someone willing to stand up, speak out, and fight for what was right, even if they came from another universe entirely. Epilogue: 6 months later, in the Avengers compound on Earth, Tony Stark was working in his lab when Friday interrupted with unusual news. "Sir, we're detecting a dimensional anomaly. Similar signature to the portal that took us to the Star Wars galaxy." "What?" Tony looked up from his work. "That shouldn't be possible. We sealed that barrier." "Nevertheless, sir, someone is attempting to contact us through dimensional channels. It's a holographic transmission. Shall I accept?" "Might as well. If it's an invasion, at least we'll see it coming." The hologram materialized. Harry Potter, looking slightly older, wearing robes that combined Hogwarts style with Republic design elements. Behind him stood a rebuilt Jedi Council chamber. "Tony," Harry greeted with a tired smile. "Sorry to bother you, but we have a situation. The entity we imprisoned 6 months ago, it's learning, evolving, and we think it's going to break free again within a year. We need the Avengers. The Force is asking, no, the entire reality is asking for your help. Again." Tony sighed, but he was already suiting up. "Friday, call the team. Tell them to pack for a long trip. Looks like we're going back to a galaxy far, far away." "Of course, sir. Shall I inform Captain Rogers that saving the multiverse is becoming a regular occurrence?" "Please do. And tell him to bring extra shields. Something tells me this is going to make last time look easy." Because that was the thing about being Earth's mightiest heroes. When reality itself called for help, when dimensions collided and ancient evils threatened all existence, the Avengers answered. Every single time. May the Force be with you. If you enjoyed this epic crossover, hit that subscribe button and drop which superhero team you'd want to see enter the Star Wars galaxy next in the comments below.